Council, good evening. I'm just waiting for a couple other council members to get on board here, so give us 2 minutes. Thanks. Go. Good evening, Council. Can everybody hear? Can everybody hear out there? Okay. Want to welcome everybody here tonight. Is there any conflict of interest amongst council members here tonight? Seeing none, before we get into the adoption of the published agenda, I just want to speak real briefly on COVID. Okay. I had several emails on COVID, and one of the emails I got this morning said it was nothing but a hoax. Okay. And I emailed this person back, and respectfully, he emailed me back. I let him know that COVID is not a hoax. My son himself is very, very sick with lung problems with COVID out in California. They had to shut his whole clinic down. He shut the clinic down. Every one of them is sick with COVID. So it is not a hoax. I just want public to know that it is not a hoax. And I want to speak just briefly, real briefly, on small businesses. We're going to have an opportunity to continue this. Small businesses are suffering big time. I don't agree with the shutdown of shutting down these small businesses. I think a small business being open and following the rules are a safer business to walk into than a box store. You go to a box store today, the people are lined up there to get in. All they do is wipe your cart and you wear a mask. You are more apt, to me, to get COVID out of a big box store than a smaller store. What we're doing here with the smaller stores, I hate to say this, but we're going to lose a lot of small stores through bankruptcy. And I don't want to see that happen. And I'm sure our council doesn't want to see it happen either. So we're going to have to push the senior level of government to reverse their decision. I know that we're going to send we're going to send letters out to the senior levels of government. I sit on the health unit myself, the Essex Windsor Health Unit, and we expressed our opinion on small businesses also. You know, they should be allowed to keep open as long as they follow protocol. One last thing I want to speak about is these demonstrations of anti-mask. These people don't want to wear masks. I think we should push the government and start finding these people. They're having massive demonstrations, 100, 200 people not wearing masks. And what are they doing to the general public? Are they spreading the virus out there? They seem like they don't give a damn. So I think this is a problem, and it's got to be addressed. So I'll leave it at that. And we're going to have more time. We have Dave Cassidy that wants to speak tonight. I'm sure council will allow him to speak. And at this time, we'll go right into the adoption of the published agenda. Can I have a mover, please? I can't see. Mover, Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bjorkman. And we have additions here, so Rob will give the new additions to the published agenda. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've had a request of council to add some correspondence It's proposed that this be added as new business items, and presumably that would become item 4 on this evening's agenda, which would push reports from administration to item 5. And the correspondence, we have a letter from Miss Kim Dennison dated December 11th. December 10th, and entitled Letter of Reason. And this letter is in response to the recent COVID-19 restrictions put in place for the Windsor and Essex County region as it pertains to small business. The second item, which was an attachment to Ms. Dennison's letter, is a chart entitled Weekly Distribution of Confirmed Cases Associated with Outbreaks by Setting. And I believe this is a publication issued from Public Health Ontario. And then the third item proposed to be added as correspondence, as new business items, is recent correspondence dated November 25th from the Windsor Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce. And this letter, the Commerce has issued a call for additional rent relief support for the border communities that have been hit hard by the border closure. And then lastly, Mr. Mayor, we have a request for delegation, as you referred to. We have Mr. David Cassidy, who has requested to be a delegation, and Mr. Cassidy, as I understand, is here to speak about the COVID-19 restrictions in small business. So it's proposed that his delegation also be added as item 4 to the agenda.
Thank you, Rob. I'm going to need a motion to have Mr. Cassidy speak, if he's allowed to speak, please. Councillor Bondi and Councillor Verbeek. All in favor? All in favor for Dave? Go ahead, Dave.
Sorry.
Oh, well, hold on.
I think the mayor froze up.
Yeah, we'll take, we've got IT on site, so we'll, if council be patient with us, and never experienced this before, but always a first for something. So be patient.
Does anybody want to sing Christmas carols?
You lead the way, Deputy Mayor.
That's
Got a great voice.
Well, it's too bad we don't have Toad here anymore, because he'd lead the way for sure.
Yeah. So when I learned from a few meetings ago, or actually, you know what, it was at the Five Eyes meeting, if somewhere along the line, the trick of turning my camera off when my internet gets wonky out here. It's pretty good right now, but if my camera goes off, I haven't checked out. I'm still here.
Try now, Larry.
Can you, can council hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Larry.
Okay. Did you hear everything I said about COVID? Did everybody get that? Okay, everybody got that? Okay.
Yeah.
So we need the adoption of the published agenda as amended, please. A mover?
Mr. Mayor, I also would like to add a motion to tonight's agenda. I don't know, through the clerk, I don't know if that's what the email earlier today was suggesting I do.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bondi. Yes, I do have that motion. I guess my suggestion procedurally would be while council's discussing under item 4, the new business items, that could be the appropriate juncture to move with that motion.
So we're going to take that motion
At the end of the budget meeting?
No.
Mr. Clerk, is that at the end of the budget?
No, item 4, new item 4, if council passes this motion to adopt the agenda. Item 4 would be the new business items, the correspondence, the Cassidy delegation. During, I'm presuming it's the motion that you sent earlier, that would probably be the appropriate place to move.
She couldn't do it now.
We're in the middle of a motion.
Oh, yeah, okay. Let's adopt this first motion as amended, please, first. Okay. Can you hear me?
Point of order.
Go ahead. Yep.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Are we adopting a motion blind? It is?
No. We're adopting the agenda of the published agenda as amended. Can you hear me? Can the people hear me there?
Okay, but yes, but I don't understand. There's an
Who's
addition.
raising-
Do we hear what the addition is?
Okay,
So,
go ahead. We're going to repeat it again. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
through you, Mr. Mayor, the proposed addition is to add some correspondence as new business items. So we're proposing that becomes item 4 on the agenda. And the correspondence is a letter from Ms. Kim Dennison, a chart issued by Health Ontario, and a further letter issued by the Windsor-Essex Region Chamber of Commerce. So we're proposing adding those items as correspondence as new business, together with a request from Mr. David Cassidy to be a delegation concerning what would presumably become item 4, the COVID-19 restrictions as it relates to small business.
Everybody heard that? Okay, so is everybody okay with the adoption as amended? Okay. All in favor?
We need a mover.
Oh, no, we had a mover and a seconder already. Who was the mover? Who was the mover? Yeah, Deputy Mayor Malash was the mover. Who was the seconder? Was it you, Councillor Bondi? Were you the seconder?
I think it was Councillor Bjorkman.
Councillor Bjorkman, you okay with that? All in favor? Carried. Now when we go to,
So through you, Mr. Mayor, now we're at the new item 4, which are those new business items.
yes,
So
we
have
can go
the-
right to Councillor Bondi. Councillor Bondi, go ahead and make your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am just finding it again. There was so many emails today that I'm trying to find it. It was the same resolution that the Kingsville Councillor DeYoung is doing. So if you just give me a minute, I'll find it. I don't know if you want to go on to somebody else, or
Okay.
if you want to wait for me. I don't want to waste time.
When
I'm
you
forwarding
find,
it here right now.
when you find that.
Okay,
Councillor-
small business. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I have it now.
Okay, go ahead.
The small
Go ahead.
business resolution, and all of council has had this resolution to, by the way, I did send last week after our little business Zoom meeting that a couple other councilors were on. So attention Premier Doug Ford, whereas the health and safety of Ontarians is the #1 priority in health, is a state of physical, mental, social well-being, not merely the absence of disease. And whereas many businesses rely on the holiday season for their financial strength, and whereby these businesses have faced unprecedented difficult times throughout 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions. And whereas closing our small businesses during the holiday season means many will not survive, and the business owners and their employees will lose their livelihoods. And whereas the town of Essex commercial businesses are predominantly made up of small independently owned businesses, and closing them would force residents to travel out of town into larger crowds, increasing their exposure to COVID-19. And whereas small independent businesses have every reason to keep customers safe and are able to ensure limited capacity, customer contact tracing, and disinfecting in between customers, and may be able to offer curbside delivery. Therefore, be resolved that the town of Essex calls upon the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, as well as the Ontario Cabinet and health officials to protect the health of Ontarians and our small businesses by allowing them to remain open to in-store sales with limited capacity and increased safety measures. And this resolution be forwarded to all of Ontario municipalities, locally, to the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation, our MPP, Taras Natashak, the Minister of Health, and so on, and the local health unit. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking for a seconder for that.
Yep. Councillor Darren is the seconder. All in favor of that? Carried.
Does anybody want to discuss it?
I just want to say, Councillor,
I would like-
I would just say, Councillor, I think we're all on the same page there. So, discussion, Councillor Bondi, go ahead, or Councillor Bowman?
I apologize for not being able to get on line sooner tonight, and maybe some of this has already been discussed. Some issues that if this is granted and we're allowed to open our businesses up, which I hope we can, it also puts some more pressure back on our own municipality to make sure that these businesses are following the correct procedures. And I'm not sure we have the staff in place right now to do that, or there'll have to be a shift in some people, because that will require some more due diligence on our part, because the enforcement part of that falls back onto our municipality to a large extent. So just for some food for thought, and some things that would have to be addressed if we do, when and if this does move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Who was next? Counselor Vandendolen, you were next, then Counselor Verbeek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would support that resolution if one line from way down in the resolution is moved up to the top. Right now, it's addressed to Premier Ford. But then way down, as you were reading, you said, we call on Premier Ford, the cabinet, and the medical community. And that's who we should be addressing this to, because it is disingenuous to think that this is about one guy. You know, in the middle of the world, there's only one guy who's doing this. This is going on all over the world, and the medical community is behind this. They're the ones pushing this. The premier and cabinet are bending to them. And if this is the issue, then we should address it to all of them. Yes, the premier, the cabinet, and the medical community. Let us reopen. But if we're just aiming at one politician, then it's partisan and it's useless and it's dishonest. So let's really get behind this and ask that the medical community allow us to reopen. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Verbeek, you were next.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my comments to the resolution. Thank you to Councillor DeYoung for originally bringing it and then bringing it before us tonight, Councillor Bondi. But we've all been getting our boxes filled today with the small business, and I want to thank all of them that have bombarded our emails today. But I also want to say, like, I'm sorry that it has to come to them having to push us to push upper levels of government, because, you know, ultimately, yes, they're taking the information from our health units, but it is the government that's going to make this decision, and we have to be more forceful in pushing them. And I think that it's brilliant that we're going to take this first step, and I appreciate the businesses, you know, pushing us to do this. I feel far safer shopping in any one of a small business than these big box stores. And it's been that way for quite some time. So yes, I'm going to be supporting the resolution, and I'm thankful for everybody that's pushed us to this. I don't think it's a joke when I'm seeing people. I have friends that are saying, let's all go to Sarnia and shop. Let's hit the boutiques, because they still can, right? Thank you.
Anybody else from council? To Councillor Vandendolen's statement there, Councillor Bondi, who was the mover there to move this? I
will accept the friendly amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Pardon me?
I will accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And that's good with the seconder? Councillor Garrett?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Now we'll go, Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you and just in general to this subject, our businesses have been doing all the right things. I have zero concern that our enforcement officers will be overworked or overlogged having to deal with this. You've gone into our businesses, our restaurants, our stores, the care that they're taking, the way that they're following the rules to make sure that we get to stay open has been exemplary. And if we had more of them in other towns and in cities, we wouldn't have some of the problems we have today. So I can't say enough about what they've been doing, what they want to do, what they've committed to do. They've reached out to us They've done all the right things, and they're being held back for no logical reason when you see what is being allowed in those bigger stores. So this is a great thing to do. We need to do this, and we need to continue doing this. We need to, each of us, encourage all of those other people we know. Anybody who writes to us, please encourage them to send that letter on to the health unit and send that letter on to the provincial government, because it doesn't stop with us. We need to push those groups. So thank you for the motion, and to the business community that's in Essex and Essex County. This is a whole county issue. They're doing the right things, and we need to stay with them. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Bondi, you had something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this motion was developed last weekend, and now the reason why I think the friendly amendment is a good idea, something has recently surfaced, where Doug Ford, our premier, is quoting that the Windsor mayor and the health unit were instrumental in the closure down here. And if you start to look at a lot of the data, there are breakouts in Windsor, and there is not a lot of cases in our municipality. So I support this. I am glad council is working on this. I would much rather have a couple hours extra of a bylaw enforcement officer rather than having a vacant storefronts, right? And this is, to me, is not just about money in our businesses. It's about the health of our community. And when we talk about fitness centers, we're talking about mental health. We're heading into the lockdown of winter, right? So it's really a double lockdown with people having no outlet during a really hard time. So I just like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and our town staff for letting us get this motion on the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Malash, go ahead.
Thank you. Through your worship, can I get Councillor Bondi to read that resolution again, please?
Thank you. I believe everybody has it up by email. I will pull it up again. It went out to everybody last week. Attention, Premier Doug Ford, and I believe Councillor Vanderdolen added, oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Is that good enough, Deputy Mayor? It's
Yeah,
on the
just let
screen.
me read through it again here.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to remember. Can we go to the bottom? I want to see the actual motion that we're making here. Therefore, be it resolved to the town of forward health officials remain open to stores with limited capacity, increased safety measures. And that is worded perfectly, because I don't think that we should allow open to the point where we were without COVID. But I think we should allow opening to a certain degree, maybe like as if we were in red or orange, with some creativity there. But I don't think that they should be painting all businesses with one brush and saying everybody across the board should be closing. If you can give good evidence that there's a certain industry or a certain type of store that is causing it by statistics, then by all means, then you have the proof. But until we've got that proof, I wholeheartedly am against what's happening right now, as everyone has stated. Backbone of our communities, and we want to make sure that these guys survive, because we're going to have hell to pay after this is done if we can't make sure our businesses are remaining stable and in good health. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Guerin, you'll be the last to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Yes, I just want to add a couple of things. I was hoping that I kind of like Deputy Mayor Malash's thought process on, in our letter, when we say limiting people, some of our businesses that we're talking to can't survive on just 10 people in their restaurant, for example, or in their stores. I'd rather see a model that is, I know right now they have the restriction of 50% capacity in some stores. I'd like to see the restrictions to the footprint of the actual building, a percentage of the building, or whatever is usually deemed as, if they can social distance and they've got a large building, then they should be allowed more than their 10 people. So I'm not sure if that's orange we want to look at. We're up to 50 people in some of these places, where you can handle up to 50 people. And then if you handle less than 50, so be it. But if there's any way we can word it so that we're not looking for 10 people, say, for example, into a restaurant that can easily social distance and accommodate, say, 50 people or more. I'm not sure if that could be added into the wording or not.
That's up to the mover and the seconder.
I'm okay with that friendly amendment.
The seconder was Joe. You're okay. Well, you're the one that made it. Okay, so is that okay with the rest of council? Council? All in favor of that? It's moved. Thank you. Thank you, council. We're going to move right into Dave. Sorry, Dave Cassidy. I'm sorry it was so long. You're on now, Dave. Go ahead.
No need to apologize. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I sent all of you a letter tonight that I penned a little earlier. But thanks for letting me speak. Obviously, there's some counselors on here that was on a meeting the other day. Oh, what does this say? Sorry, start my video. I'm sorry. I thought you wanted me to stay off video. Okay. I have a great face for radio. Anyways, we did have a Zoom meeting with some counselors and some businesses, both in there was some in Essex, Leamington, Kingsville. We had some counselors from Lakeshore, and some of the things that I just like to speak about is right now, and you've covered a lot of it actually, where we're headed here. But it's ridiculous that the big box stores, are allowed to be open, and the small businesses, which is the backbone of our communities, are forced to close. A lot of us have spent some life savings on, opening up our businesses, and a lot of us are on the cusp of losing everything. Essex in particular is made up of all small businesses. Let's not kid anybody. That's our whole, our whole community. And that's what makes us so important in our little town. And it's a little lunchbox community, if you want to call it, whether you're in Colchester, Harrow, Essex, McGregor, and that's what it's all made up of. The one thing that's really troublesome though is the transparency part, because I can't follow the numbers. You guys are probably a lot smarter than me, but data that they prove to us and data that you have now is there that shows very clearly that there's not a transmission that's happening in our little town, whether it's in long-term cares, whether it's in hospitals. I drive by every single day from my office to go home, and I watch that Costco, and I watch them around the building lined up outside there. They're lined up outside prior to even going in. Then they get inside. There's no data tracing. I can tell you in my business alone, you have to sign up prior to. When you come to my front door, my whole front door is plastered with a sticker that shows all of the precautions. You get in, you sanitize. We contact trace every single person. You get a basket, you get a rag, you get cleaner, you get hand sanitizer. You don't leave your pod. We follow every single protocol and then some in order for people to be able to work out in our facility. Originally they went to some different numbers, but the reality is, Larry, you sit on the board. You get that. You have to get that data. Somebody has to get that data as to what it shows in our area. Now, thank God that we have got all that data, but it's impossible for us to even be where we're at today based on that data. The province last week didn't even know that Dr. Ahmed was calling a Section 22 and closing the schools. A lot of people are very happy. There's a downside risk when you do close the schools because people can't go to employment, puts different burdens on different things. But I just wonder, does council actually get the numbers? That's the key here. The reality is, you wash your hands, right? You do all the proper things. You wear your mask, you social distance, you follow all protocol. That's what needs to happen. Councillor Guerin brought up about, on a percentage base. I know that others have brought up on what that percentage base is. That's what needs, if you have a small restaurant in town and you can only have 10 people inside, yet I have a facility that has 250 capacity that you could have, how does that make sense that you can have 10 only in there? Last on Friday, I did speak to the premier. I talk to him frequently, usually not about COVID, but lately it has been about COVID. And he is supportive of this issue as well. That's what's interesting. However, there's going to be no politician, and every one of you is probably, no politician will ever go against a medical professional. It's political suicide. I do know a little bit about politics. Every one of you know that it's political suicide. So why would somebody go against the medical world when they're saying, here it is? And right now, I'm a firm believer that our chief medical officer of Ontario is playing a little bit of politics. He's a win appointee. I want to be very clear on that. He's a win appointee. And I think there's a little bit of politics being played because it's not based on data. The data that we have and the data that everybody has shows there's zero transmission. There's been a ton of people that have spent thousands and thousands of dollars to get our small businesses to where it needs to be so we can continue to operate as a small business. And Councillor Bowman, you brought up about potentially we have to get our bylaw enforcement, everybody. I know my name's Cassidy. I know the frickin' police are next door. I know they're at my door 7 times a frickin' week when we first opened up. And not one of them knew what the regulations were. I called the CAO. I called Mr. Nepsky. I said, why are they still continuing to come here? Why is bylaw coming here? We give them all the regulations. We showed the regulations that we could open up in the last phase, and it's still going to, I don't think that that's the problem. The small businesses in town, everybody understands COVID is here. We follow the rules, and we're going to continue to follow the rules. And really, I really hope the council is going to push this agenda hard. They're going to ask the premier, ask the health ministers, and ask the health unit that they're going to back these restrictions off, look at percentages, and potentially, I pray that our small businesses are going to continue to be open and not closed and close us forever, potentially. Thank you so much, for giving me the opportunity. We just want to do our part. There's a lot of small businesses in town that are really hurting, and hopefully every municipality in Windsor and Essex County can band together and show the province what we can do down here in Windsor, Essex County about staying safe, etc. So thank you so much. I appreciate you giving me the time.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Bowman, you had something to add?
Yeah,
Okay.
just about my earlier comment with regard to the inspection. That's just a method of showing that we are doing the due diligence, and the proprietors of the various businesses are following procedures. And it just sort of backs up what we've been saying, that they are doing good jobs. And if there is a spot where something's falling down, the bylaw enforcement officer, all he has to do is, here's the regulations, clean up your act. But I think majority of the people, and I fully believe that they're totally compliant because that's their livelihood. And if they, why wouldn't I be compliant to promote my business? But that's just another step to saying that, yes, they are compliant, they are following the rules, that they should be open. So just to carry that, if I came across as a negative thing, it certainly wasn't my intention. Anyway, good presentation, Dave. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Garing, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Dave, for coming forward again. I also want to add that this time around with this lockdown, I don't think there's going to be any government support for these businesses either. There was the first time around if you qualified. The small guy got nothing anyways, but there's nothing for these business owners. And this is a time of year where a lot of these businesses are relying on this money through the holidays to get them through the year in some cases. So we definitely got a major problem on our hands here that we have to continue pushing. I believe it's the health unit and the province. We've got to push them both. And we've got to try to get to, I wish we were pushing more, Dave, 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, when we kind of seen this coming. We kind of seen, he set up the different colors, and we knew that it was a way to get to a gray eventually. So I wish we would have done it a little bit sooner. That's all I have to say.
Joe, we can't
Thank
worry
you.
about what's gone by. I mean, the reality is, our numbers are down in Essex because we're following protocol. Make no mistake. That's what's happening in our town. We're following protocol. How can, looping us with long-term care hospitals and everything else doesn't warrant us being shut down. So that's where our focus just needs to be, that we are doing our due diligence through the whole thing. It does not warrant a lockdown. Thank you so much for bringing it up, council. But it's the truth. This does not warrant a lockdown right now. Look at the numbers today. 195. Where are they from? Where are those numbers from? We can't get the data, but I'm sure that council can get the data, because I have talked to Ahmed. I have sent him emails. I can't get the data. Thank goodness that somebody has started giving me the data to that website, and I can get on the Ontario website to see where the data is coming out of. There's no real data there to show that we should, especially in our town. You can't, there does not warrant it whatsoever.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Bondi, and then we're gonna move on because we got our budget meeting here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do understand we have a budget meeting. It's unfortunate that we didn't end up calling a special 1 or even 2 hour meeting just to focus on. I think that it's really that important. Earlier, everybody got a chart with the weekly distribution of confirmed COVID cases associated with outbreaks by setting type. And you'll see in there's Windsor, Essex. There is nothing in the fitness. There is nothing in the personal service. So and all of these come from the Ministry of Health. There is a database out there linked right to the Ministry of Health. I have access to it. Others in the community have access to it. Elected officials can get access to it. So we need to start getting, if we're not agreeing with what the health unit is sharing, there is more information out there that we need to access. I am of the opinion that we need to make a motion tonight. I would love to say that fitness is essential. Working out is essential. And some people can't, some people don't, some people need help. They need a trainer. Some people need routine exercises that don't hurt themselves. Working out in a gym is like a form activity. It's really healthy for people. If you go to the Ontario, it is the Open Ontario government page. This is right off their page. It says, in lockdown, trips outside the home should only be for essential reasons: work, school, groceries, pharmacy, healthcare, assisting vulnerable individuals, or exercise in physical activity. So even the Ontario government understands that exercise and physical activity is needed, but yet they're closing our gyms. Even though I talked to Houston's today in Harrow, they would be more than willing to book people in, in small groups, 5 at a time, based on square footage, based on, a formula, a capacity formula. So I think we need to look at making gyms, fitness, wellness. I went for a massage today. It was amazing. I was this close to somebody getting a massage, but I can't go work out in a 2,000 square foot building. So, Mr. Mayor, if we can we make a motion that fitness and physical activity are an essential activity? Because they should be. You should be able to go to the doctor, and you should be able to get a script for a gym membership. I don't know. I think we need to go down that avenue. I think we need to start. You could go to the liquor store. I could go to the liquor store right now, but I can't go to the gym. Where's the priorities?
Councillor Bondi, I think we're all on the same page. That relates to small businesses. Every one of us, I think everybody on council here tonight agrees with you 100%. We agree with Dave Cassidy. We agree with the small businesses. I think what we have to do, we got to pressure senior level government to make that change. And Dave said it right. Dave Cassidy said it right. We have to push the senior level of government. as a council, and all councils, all 7 municipalities got to get on board and push and push. Okay. If we don't, I'm going to say it again. If we don't, we're going to lose small businesses, and it's going to hurt. It's going to really hurt. It's going to hurt. So anyways, I need a motion to receive David. Go ahead, Councillor Verbeek. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree, and I am grateful that we're going to send this letter, and hopefully all the municipalities across the province are going to jump onto that. But there is just one more small step we could take. And I was raising my hand to second the motion that Councillor Bondi made about us deeming exercise and working out essential. The provincial health unit has done so. So why can't Essex Council? I was just seconding her motion.
Go ahead. If you want to make that motion, Councillor Bondi, you got a seconder? All in favor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, read your motion. Go ahead.
Sure, that the town of Essex declare physical fitness and exercise as essential. I don't know if anybody wants to add any friendly amendments to it. And we deem that those facilities that exercise and physical fitness take place in are essential businesses.
Councillor Verbeek, you second that motion? Discussion, Councillor Van den Dolen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm mostly in favor of this, but I'm a little bit concerned that we're just singling out one little industry, fitness. I mean, I know people in other businesses who feel themselves just as essential, and I'm wondering how I'm going to defend myself to them a few days from now when they say, "Oh, you single out like fitness. The 2 fitness places can reopen, but you didn't defend us. We're essential too." You know, I mean, why is it that you can go to a giant box store hardware, but not a little hardware? You know, is there any way we can expand this to include some other groups so that it isn't just about the fitness business?
Councillor Van den Dolen, didn't we talk about including all small businesses? All small businesses. We made that very clear. That's including the fitness centers. It's all small businesses. And
well, we can amend the motion, Mr. Mayor, to include that the town of Essex deem all small businesses in our municipality essential.
That's what I like.
And they can operate under restricted capacity within safe restrictions.
Exactly right. That's good. And that's good with the seconder. Good. All in favor of that?
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, point of order. I think we should hear from our CEO too first and have a discussion on that motion.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Through your worship, I think it's fantastic that as a council, we want to support our community. Administration, we want to support our community as well. I'm not sure, and maybe we need to get some legal opinion on what we can and can't declare as municipality and what falls out from that. So sure, we can declare that they're essential. What does the health unit consider essential? What does the province consider essential as a definition? So I'm not saying I know everyone's trying to help. I don't know by us making a motion as the council of the town of Essex, if it's going to carry any weight with the province and the health unit. And it might be something we want to check to make sure that it's something that we can actually move forward on.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Just going back to small businesses, going back once again, we know that all the municipalities are on board with this. We know they are. And we know there's letters. I think most of the municipalities that I spoke to are sending letters out. I don't know. I don't know what more we can do. Okay. We can pressure the health unit. We can pressure senior levels of government. What more can we do? I mean, I don't want to see a small business close. Believe me, I don't. So anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. We're going to go to Councillor Bjorkman and then Councillor Van den Dolen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you and to council, I don't think it doesn't hurt council, it doesn't hurt our town at all to say that we deem our small businesses essential. We do deem them essential. They're essential to our town. That does not give us the right to supersede any government of Ontario rule or any health unit. But we're just saying, we want to stand up and say, these businesses are essential to our town. That's why we're pushing harder on the government. And other towns believe that as well. They are essential to their town. They're essential to our tax base. They're essential to the wellness of our people. It doesn't, but us saying that they're essential does not give them the right to say, okay, the town has deemed us essential. Now we can just open up and go back to work. That does not supersede any kind of health unit or government rulings, but it does put us behind our people. So I don't see any a negative side to us doing that. We're just trying to stand up and point to our people and say, we need them. You got to help us, help them.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chris Nepsey.
Thank you, Your Worship.
I thought it was.
Thank you, Your Worship. I completely, Councillor Bjorkman, excellent point, but I think it's important then that point is written into the declaration. Otherwise, you are going to get small businesses that read that and say, Town of Essex said, I'm essential, which means I can do this. So if it's written into your declaration that, or your notice of motion or your resolution that, yes, the Town of Essex Council feels that their small businesses are essential, however, they still need to follow the current provincial guidelines or something to that effect, because my fear will be that we're going to get people that are going to use it and it's just going to create conflict, and we don't want conflict. We want to be together and we want that support. So I think there's something in between there that will show that they're essential, show that you support them, but also show the limitations of what that means for you.
Thank you. Councillor Bannon, knowing you were next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree that we probably need the legal disclaimer. But as Mr. Nepsey was saying, and as I was pointing out months ago when we started having this discussion, that we are in fact powerless. We have no jurisdictional influence or power. I don't think Canadians realize how many of their liberties and freedoms they've given up over the last 20 years, but we're not in charge. Other people are, and we don't have any leverage over them. And be that as it may, we still have a right to stand up and say, we disagree with this. And to support what Councillor Bjorkman said, it is our duty to stand up, whether we have jurisdiction or not, whether people are misled or not. We have to stand up and say, we disagree with this. We think these should reopen. Yeah, the lack of data. I mean, there's a lack of data, and yet we're overwhelmed with data. The thing that blows me away is that we've just gone into a 28-day lockdown. Quebec is going into a 14-day lockdown. Why? Because their death rate is 400% higher than ours. So they're only locking down half as much. How come their medical industry has come to such a different conclusion? But anyway, I think we should take Mr. Nepsey's advice, put in that disclaimer, but still speak out against the authorities, all of them, who have put us in this position. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, now we've gone through all the council. Okay. What is a flavor of council tonight? What do you want to do? Do you want to send the letters out? Okay, we got to know what direction we're going here now. We've been all over the map here. Councillor Bondi is the one that starts. So Councillor Bondi, what is your wish here?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, well, we can add the disclaimer, but something along the lines like small businesses are the backbone to our communities. You know, they provide us with mental, physical, social well-being. Something along that lines with the disclaimer that our CAO has. And I'm certainly up to friendly amendments, and we can work together as a group to put something forward to send to all of our municipalities, the health unit, the premier, the MPP, etc.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Verbeek, you were a seconder. Are you in favor of this?
I am.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of this? Thank you. Once again, Dave, sorry for the delay. It's been a long long discussion, but a healthy discussion. And I think we're all on the same page. We are.
Thank you. We hopefully this gets resolved and this whole disclaimer, et cetera. I mean, I'm not sure about that, Chris, but best of luck. I don't think we need to worry about that. We need to open up, figure it out, and move forward. Good luck with the budget tonight. That might be a real barn burner. Take
Yeah.
care.
Thank you, Dave.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Yeah, I need a motion to receive Dave as a delegation, please. Need a motion. Okay, Councillor Gary and Councillor Bjorkman, all in favor? That one's carried, and I need a motion to receive the correspondence from Kim and from Kim Dennison and Essex Windsor Chamber. I need a motion for that one too, please. Deputy Mayor Malage and Councillor Bjork or Councillor Vandal, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you, Council. We're going to move right into budget.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, the correspondence from the Windsor Chamber, are we just receiving that, or can we receive and support that for the chamber? Did everybody get a chance to read that?
Everybody read it? Who was the mover on this one here? Who was the last mover? Councillor Van Dolen and Councillor Malage. Are you in favor, or Deputy Mayor Malage? You in favor of that? Is that okay? Okay, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Council. That was a long discussion and a healthy discussion. Thank you. So we'll move right into reports from administration. Chris, you got anything? Nothing? Okay, we'll go right into to the Director of Corporate Services. Jeff, are you all set for the budget? Go ahead.
Through the chair, I don't have anything either.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. Is my audio better tonight? I got some feedback
Yes,
that I was
it is.
crackling a bit. Okay.
Sure.
So through the chair, so that was one of the most unique introductions to the budget I've ever encountered here at the town of Essex, but it is a year like no other. So on that note, included in the council agenda, there are 3 resolutions that we're hoping to achieve. The first would be that the 2021 operating budget as presented be adopted in principle, inclusive of all operating adjustments summarized in the listing of changes since the November 30th, 2020 budget introduction and walkthrough special meeting of council. The second is that the 2021 capital budget as presented be adopted in principle, inclusive of all capital adjustments summarized in the listing of changes since the November 30th, 2020 budget introduction and walkthrough special meeting of council. And the third is that authorization be granted to complete in fiscal year 2021 any 2020 projects that remain outstanding as of December 31st, 2020 and do not appear in the 2021 budget as presented, as long as the project costs do not exceed previously approved funding amounts or allocations. So
Thank
those are
you.
the 3 resolutions that we're hoping to achieve through deliberations tonight. So I'm not going to walk through the budget document again. We did that on November 30th. Instead, I will simply go to page. Actually, I will put up the I will have Shelley put up the post-budget walkthrough. Changes. So these amounts, my computer's being difficult. Schedule just disappeared. Oh, bear with me. Okay, so these amounts, we have the 2021 operating amounts. So we show the opening balance and then the December 4th. So the opening balance is November 30th, 2020. The closing balance is December 14th, 2020. This is our list of changes where we track. So on the operating side, we had the RFP for insurance close that was awarded at the last council meeting. It realized a savings of $69,252. So that reduction of expense is captured on this listing. We made, based on feedback and conversation, we identified that amount and transferred it to reserve for future insurance claims, because we have fallen in a few positions where we needed a deductible amount and we had to come back and get council approval for those amounts and find it elsewhere. So it's prudent to have a reserve for those type of claims. So that amount was moved to that reserve. And then once you go to the bottom part, which is the 2021 capital budget, there's some small changes on there. There is an addition of HVAC replacement at the Essex Recreation Center in the amount of $175,000. That is a cost split with the school board in the amount of $87,500. So the town of Essex is responsible for $87,500, and that would come from Community Services Building and Equipment Reserve. There was also the removal of 4 projects to help offset that, which include the Heritage Train Station caboose upgrade in the amount of $8,000. Oh, sorry, that one was a modification. It wasn't a removal. It was classified as prior year funding, $8,000 previously. However, it falls under other in $8,000. The next one was a removal, and that was LED screen replacement at the Essex Recreation Complex, pool piping study, and canopy roof restoration at Essex Recreation Complex. I'm not sure if Director Sweet would like to address any of these at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Director Morrison. Just quickly, the first one, we just met with the school board, unfortunately, after our first budget deliberations. And as a partner, they brought through the HVAC, and it's actually 3 HVAC units over the Gym A, which we both share. They're custom designed, and they do need to be replaced. They don't know if they'll make it another year. The Heritage Train Station, that was Heritage Essex did notify us that they received a grant. So they're committed $8,000 to the project. So we wanted to show that as revenue. Then the next 3 were from actually the school board, that they were their initiatives that they've withdrawn. So we wanted to take it out of our budget.
Thank you, Doug. Any questions so far from council? Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, so we will move straight into page 4 or 5 of the operating budget. So page 4 and 5, that is the 2021 budget snapshot. We walked through this in detail on November 30th. It goes through to summarize that overall, there's a 0% tax increase to the general levy. On the bottom of page 5, it further breaks down the 2021 residential tax rate, where you can see that the general municipal levy is 0%, urban levy is a 0% increase, and garbage collection and disposal levy is a 0% increase. Currently included in the budget has the county's projected amount of 1.45%. However, that has been approved at a lower amount, I believe 0.49%, and that will be updated in the final version of this document. Once you go down further, you get towards 2 and 3, you have the general municipal levy at 0. You have the rural levy, which has an 11.17% increase, which is $4.63 on the average home. And the garbage collection disposal levy is 0%. Currently, the education levy is kept at 0 because it's estimated until the final information comes out. Are there any questions as it pertains to operating in page 4 and 5?
Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Director Morrison. Yeah, the rural levy in Ward 2 and 3, we're advertising ourselves as holding the line on tax increases. And this is actually a tax increase of 11.7% on that levy. Regardless of the fact that it's $4.63, we still are raising the tax on Ward 2 and 3. Is there a method for us to negate that increase and to actually maintain our 0% increase?
Through the chair, the levies are calculated based on total need and expenditure. We did comb through the reserves to see if we could mitigate that 11.17% increase. The rural levy is in a slight deficit position currently. However, if council wish to mitigate that, you can either, there's a few options. You can either offset that $27,000, which I believe Yeah, I believe it's a $27,000 total impact. That can either be mitigated through the council contingency that we have as a placeholder in capital, or you could mitigate it against the insurance deductible savings for 2021. However, please note that that'll be simply offsetting that cost for 2021, and that cost will then reappear in 2022. So if you would like to be a zero across the board, those are potentially two options.
Councillor Bjorkman, then Councillor Vanendel, and you're after. Councillor
Hey,
Bjorkman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you to council, I think it's important that every ward and every resident has exactly the same thing. If we're touting that this is what we're doing, if it was Ward 1 that we're just going to raise a small amount just in Ward 1 or just in Ward 4, I don't think that would be fair. So I think that we need to take the advice of Director Morrison, and I would say using that insurance deductible. And if it comes back for next year, that's where it's going to be. Well, I would imagine this is the year we're trying to keep a zero. People have been through enough. We've advertised that way. I think we need to produce that for them. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Vanendel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, just a short backup for what Councillor Bjorkman is saying. Achieving a zero is very difficult. It's hard for administration. It's difficult for us. All the needs and wants we're putting aside, but we need to do it this year because of the special circumstances and the whole COVID disaster. And it'd be crazy to throw it away just for $27,000. It has to look like it's across the board that we did this for everybody. Because if there's a footnote on it, then it's not a real zero. We need to produce, I think, a real zero because it has, I think it has a positive emotional effect on who we're working for here, that it really should be a zero, and we'll wear the $27,000 next year or the year after. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Verbeek, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really sorry, Mr. Morrison. I wish we could just accept this wonderful document with all the work you have put into it. But if Councillor Bjorkman has made this motion, I support 100%. And can you confirm that that using the councillor's contingency or offsetting with the insurance deductible there are the only two options, or are they just the best options and that you were able to find?
Through the chair, they're the best options. Could be endless options if you wanted, but those were the two best options.
Okay.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Malash, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we use contingency fund to level this increase, the $27,000 increase, so that we go zero across the board.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Bjorkman, did you want to second that? No? Who is going to second it here? Councillor Vanendel. All in favor? Question? You got a question? Councillor Bjorkman, you got a question before we vote on?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I didn't, my suggestion was not to use the contingency reserve, but to use the insurance deductible. I want the contingency to be available to us through the year. So I won't support this, taking it from that fund.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Malash.
Yes, I don't care which fund actually it comes from. Can I?
All right.
I'll change it to from our reserve, from the contingency for the insurance reserve.
Okay,
if the
thank you.
seconder's good.
Seconder, who was the seconder here? Councillor Vanendel, you're okay with that? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Go ahead, Jeff. You had a question, Councillor Vanendel, did you have a further question? You had your hand up. No, okay, thank you. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was voting.
Okay. Through the chair, then on that one, congratulations. You've achieved a 0% thus far on the total town of Essex levy.
Good.
So I don't want to go through operating in detail. I don't know how much value that would add. If there's any questions as it pertains to operating, we can deal with them. Like I said at the beginning, I hope that in my, treasurer role, I really hope that we can get everything approved. But if you want to break it up and piecemeal it, we can break it up and deal with operating and then move into capital, or we can just go into capital and discuss the resolutions as a whole at the end. What's the appetite of council?
Why, to council, I'm sure council's gone through the budget. Has all of council gone through the budget a couple of times? Is there any questions on the budget? Let's put it that way. Is there anything at all? Deputy Mayor Malash, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I did have a conversation, and I'm sure there are many councillors that have had conversations with Mr. Morrison through the week or the last 2 weeks about the operating budget and probably the capital budget as well. But I talked with him for quite a while in depth on different categories where I was going to try and shake down everybody and try and get another 1% out of operating and so on. And we went through a lot of the expenses. I know there's certain expenses that there's no way that you can reduce them. Salaries are salaries unless we want to lay off people, or same with insurance. There's no way you can. So there's a lot of expenses that we have in operating that there's no way you're going to get a lower number, but there's certain ones that I wanted Jeff to review with me, and we went through them. There's no way that we're going to get anything more out of the operating budget. And I just want to thank Mr. Morrison for taking the time to go through that all with me. And I think that council, we've got a pretty good budget here. They've gone through line by line to try and figure out if they really need the expense. And I congratulate administration for taking the time to do that in this tough year.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Vanden, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Where's remind me, where's the development charges, that proposed waiver? Is that in operating or in capital?
Through the chair, yes, the development charges are in operating. Thank you for the reminder. So I owe you a discussion on infill development and the potential for the waiver of development charges on infill development. So I put together, after the last council meeting, I was tasked with kind of looking at options and models to fund infill development. So going through it, based on my review, area specific, that's the wastewater component. I don't feel that it would be prudent to waive those due to the fact that in certain wards there's debt associated with it and we're paying it back, and it will have a upward trend on user rates on the wastewater side. And then you look at soft services and hard services. Soft services are $641,000 for all 132 units. Hard services is $407,000 for all 132 units. So keep in mind, soft services are services related to a highway, fire protection services, policing services, and administration essential service studies. So a lot of those are impacted by population and housing growth. Hard services are outdoor recreation services, indoor recreation services, library services, and administration for community-based services. So I ran some numbers. With my treasurer hat on again, my preference and recommendation would be for deferral up to a predetermined time at, I always like interest, but could potentially be 0% interest depending on council's appetite. That way we defer it and give the break, but we also collect it eventually. However, based on the discussion at last council and the task, so we would be able to, I believe it was Deputy Mayor Malash, we would be able to defer, we would be able to waive. So it's not a deferral. We would waive the development charges for those 132 units, and the town would hold a loan against ourselves for the next 2 years until those properties become assessed. So once those properties become assessed, we get assessment related revenue from growth. So in this year's budget, we have $400,000 included related to growth. Keep in mind that that $400,000 in this year's budget was fully offset by $416,000 in wave development charges on the property tax side. So you could do it. The problem is that it wouldn't just be a 1-year payback. So the worst case scenario would be, best case for development, worst case for financing option would be all 132 are done at once. That means that based on an average home in the town of Essex, which is $186,000, the property tax that we receive is about $1,464 a year. So the payback period would be 5.4 years. If you have homes that are built at a higher value, so if you get a $450,000 home and they're all built, that's 2.2 years it would take to pay those development charges back. But keep in mind, after those development charges back, all of that revenue becomes additional revenue now. So we can set it up in a way that we would fund it from the landfill reserve at our bank interest rate. That way it's not being subsidized or cost anything extra. And then 2 years later, based on the return of the SUPs and assessment information for those properties, we could offset those development charges. So not sure exactly how that'll look depending on uptake and quantity, but we potentially could facilitate that if council wanted to. But keep in mind that that could tie up an additional $1 million in landfill reserve to go to development charges. And yeah, it's food for thought.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else? Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Morrison. So that is with, we would still charge the wastewater charge. We wouldn't be waiving water and wastewater. We would just be waiving soft services and hard services.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that would, again, it's paid back once we are making the taxes from it. And it allows, again, my point with the infill that is good is that, I mean, the roads, I understand the hard costs and soft service costs, but if let's say we get 15 of those built, 15 of those doesn't require us to buy a new fire truck, doesn't require us to put in a new pool or a new park. All of those services are already there. These are places that we want families to move into and fill in streets and fill in areas. So I still think it's a great idea. I think we should go forward with that on a 2-year limit, just to get those infill properties, because we want people building houses that are affordable, that are attainable. This isn't a big subdivision going in. People are going to build homes that reflect the homes that are in those areas. And I just think it's a great fit for the kind of housing we're trying to get in here. So I really like it. I think we should go ahead with that.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else from council? Nobody else? We need a motion. Somebody want to make? Yep. Somebody want to make a motion on that one?
I had
Councillor,
something to say.
go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm still opposed to this because I don't think it's necessary to incentivize infill. People want to live in an established neighborhood. These are already more attractive lots, and if you waive their fees, that means that the last guy or last woman to build a house on the street, they get free development charges. You could see how some developer is going to game that at some point, where they're going to build a street, they're going to leave one lot empty for a couple of years, and then a few years later they come back and, oh, it's an infill, so they don't have to pay the development charges. They save a few $1,000, and this is how that happens. And I don't think we need to incentivize this. We need to incentivize the new development in new subdivisions where they put in the roads, but we don't need to do it in the infill areas. So I'm opposed. So I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Darren, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Vanderdoel, and I don't see the waiving of development fees for the infills being the deal breaker for us. We have people building on them now, a couple this last couple of years, and I think another one going in on St. James, I believe, and they're paying the development fee right now. Again, at the end of the day, these people, if they want to build on them, they will. A lot of them are sitting on them, perhaps for whatever reason. Maybe they don't want someone living next to them, or maybe they're saving it for their grandkid up the road. But for the very few properties we're talking about, I don't see the need to waive them in this instance. I agree on what we've done in the past and where we've done it and why we've done it, but for the infill, I'm opposed to it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Verbeek, you were next.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted clarity. So Councillor Bjorkman, were you making the motion is the question, is one question, but it's to waive the wastewater and, or not to waive the wastewater, only hard and soft surfaces, which for the most case in these infill lots is already present, right? And with a 2-year limit or whatever limit we choose to put on it. Say, as other councillors are suggesting, there's just going to be this massive amount of our people trying to pick up on that savings of the development charges. They all start wanting to develop these 132 lots. Well, lucky for us, right, in our tax base. But with the 2-year limit, if for some reason we want to back off on that, don't we have the ability at that point?
Go ahead, Jeff. Did you want to answer that?
Through the chair, I would have to direct that question to Development Services. They're the development charge experts.
Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council. Yeah, there's options always to make amendments to the development charges bylaw, and so as the report indicated last week, there is a process that must be abided by when amending the bylaw, and we can set a time limit. And if we were to say, as Councillor Verbeek indicated, change our minds 2 years from now, and maybe there isn't an influx as we had hoped, we would have to amend that bylaw once again. So, and it's not an easy process, as we've all probably seen before. The background study needs to be completed, and it needs to be released at least 60 days prior to a council meeting that makes that decision on the bylaw. Then there's the public meeting component. Of course, there's a 40-day appeal period. So it's not as simply snap your fingers and we can change that 2-year deadline to say a 4-year deadline, but it is possible, Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you. Anybody else from council? Councillor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm definitely in favor of looking at something for these 132 lots. I don't believe that we've had a lot of traction on them. I believe a majority of them are in Colchester. You know, I would rather develop on infill lots than take up another farmland. I think that these are max, maybe we get 15. That's great. I think that this is a way to help the little guy. This is not helping a big developer come in. This is helping making developments affordable for the average person building a home. That's what we want to do. You know, we get a lot of complaints, especially in the Colchester area, about high water and wastewater fees. And I've been told before that's because we have a small amount of users in a large system. So the more people we can get in Colchester to live there, the more people we have paying into those systems. So I think it's going to help with blight. I think it'll help in some of our areas where there's those lots. I think it's making our community safer. I think it's making our property values go up. I think it's making our communities more attractive. I think it's good for our businesses. I think the deputy mayor's idea on, you know, getting that loan and paying it back with this assessment, I think it's something we have to investigate. I think that these 132 lots have probably been lots. to see them move. Necessarily, you know, I get where Councillor Garen's come from, but that's in Essex really isn't issues with development, right? You know, it's houses are selling like hotcakes down here in Harrow, and I know Harrow has zero development fees, but now let's look at Colchester. Let's see how we can do something to stimulate all of those lots in Colchester. And this is one way. If we didn't have a problem, they'd already be built on. And we do have a problem. They're not. And now economic times are hard for people right now. Building a new house is hard. And this can give people a different type of house, not those cookie cutter houses that we get in those subdivisions with all those 40-foot lots where we cram them in. This is going to add charm and uniqueness. So I would like to support this motion as well. And Mr. Mayor, I would like a recorded vote too as well. Thank you.
We haven't got a motion yet, Counselor. Who's next? Counselor Bowman was next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. A comment that I've never been a favor of waiving development charges, because somehow you have to support that, and if it's not collected from the development charge as such, it comes back on Texas because it has to be paid one way or the other. If there's some creative ways of collecting it, that's one thing. But actually waiving the development charges is a bad move on a long term. I know we've done it in the Harrow area to try to stimulate growth, and it seems to have worked to an extent because we have seen some movement there. But as a general process, that has to be borne by the general taxpayer, and that doesn't really seem favor that the general taxpayer has got to pay for somebody else's development. And moving forward, I think it's got to be very careful, because as the people that come and do our studies, when we have to redo our development charges fees, they'll point out that that's usually not the reason that there's no development. It's other factors that cause it. And because if you take a look, the highest development charges in our area, and I'm not talking just Essex, but the surrounding ones, are also the highest populated and higher growing ones. So development charges are not a killer, although a lot of developers would like to tell you that. It seems like if the place is attractive to grow at the time, away it goes. And that's the most important part. It's keeping our places attractive to grow. So anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to check, is tonight a reasonable time to make a motion in order to move forward with waiving infill DCs? Or do I need to wait for a regular council meeting? Can I make that motion tonight?
Councilor, I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can make that motion tonight.
Okay, then go ahead and make that.
I'd like to speak on it just before you make the motion. I'd like to just, anybody else want to speak on this before a motion's made?
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Milano. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Done it after motion too.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right now, these 132 lots have been sitting around perhaps for 10, 20 years. And a lot of times I think you're going to see that it's people that live right next door to the lot that own the lots or lot. Right. And even if not, obviously there's been no incentive for these people to want to put houses on these pieces of property. And I think if we want them to be infilled in a relatively short period of time, you have to incentivize to make sure that people want to do it. I think by getting rid of the hard and soft and not getting rid of the water and sewage portion, you're still saving residents about $10,000 per lot. And I'll ask Mr. Morrison in a minute to confirm that, but I think it's roughly around $10,000. I think if I had an empty lot next to me and I knew that there was a program that over the next 2 years, if I get off my duff and put something up on that property, I can get an extra $10,000 out of this. Given the fact that the market right now is a seller's market, I think that you'll see a lot of these lots, at least 25% of them will have an uptake. There's no cost to us because we're going to defer the charges for 2 years. And by the time we have to pay that, you'll see us collecting property taxes again. So it's a $0 effect for us. We're deferring the charge, but we're going to get it back out of the new taxes that we're going to be receiving. And we'll be essentially pushing that tax collection on these pieces of property forward relatively quick by giving the incentive and having them build a home. I'm going to be in favor of the motion to when Councillor Bjorkman makes it. I think that we should be moving forward on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Guerin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there is no impact to us to do something that's going to help us 2 years in a row, we get tax money, and then I'm on board for some of that. I still don't think it's going to help. I really don't think we need 2 years to do it. We could probably do it in 1 year. You could probably send letters to everybody who owns a property and ask them if they think they'd be of interest in it. I still don't believe it's going to be that much of an impact. But I would support something if it's going to be at no cost to us and a true no cost to us, and we're only basically deferring it. I could get on board with some of that on a short-term basis. There are also, and maybe Ms. Chabot can speak to it, there are also some properties that the maps are a little outdated now because there are some that have been built on. There's also 9 that are identified in Ward 1 as being infill, but they're owned by a cooperative company. So they would have to build on them. So me or you couldn't go buy those lots and just build on them. I believe they belong to the cooperative. Maybe Ms. Chabot can maybe speak to that, but the maps are outdated.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Lori, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just made 2 notes, so I do want to go back to Councillor Guerin, your question, as well as Deputy Mayor Meloche. The question pertaining to lots that are not identified on the maps that we presented back in March. So any study and any amendment to the development charges bylaw would fully define infill residential and could include a list of properties to make it very easy on us, or it could include a map, or it could just be up to administration to determine whether a lot is infill. So are we tied to the 132? Technically, as a part of this presentation, we would be, but during the background study, we may see that it fluctuates to less than 132. Maybe they've already been developed, as you had indicated, Councillor Guerin, or maybe it may be more than 132. The background study will help identify that in the appendices, in the kind of the schedules to any changes that you would propose as a part of that development charges bylaw. And if I may proceed with Deputy Mayor Meloche, oh my gosh, the question that was posed, I apologize. There was a question that I wanted to state. It was actually, I think, pertaining to educating the public. So that 2-year timeframe or 1-year timeframe, whatever it may be, the planning division here in Development Services would be armed with whether it's information sessions or virtual drop-in open houses or information booklets or mail outs to all of those residents. If there is anything that we could educate the public with, we will do our best once or if the development charges bylaw is amended to be able to educate and share with the public that there's a timeline on this and to proceed as soon as possible. So we would also have an operating, not so much an impact, but rather a desire to make your wish come true as well.
Lori, just a question from me to you. If we waive these development charges for a 24-month period, for example, and let's say we have this coming year, we have 20 homes or 30 homes built on these infill, that development charge has to be paid We have to come up with that money yearly, don't we? Every year we got to come up so I just want council to be aware of this. If 20 or 30 of these infill lots are built on, the development fees got to come from somewhere, and they're going to come from next year's budget. So I just want council to be aware of that, because that's tying up money, like Councillor Guerin. I'll say exactly what you said last meeting about this road right behind us here not being done. We're tying up taxpayers' money. And yes, I was in favor of infill at one time, but I've changed my mind. I'll be honest with you. Why should the taxpayer be responsible for paying development fees? Yes, we might get it back after 2 years, start getting it back, but we're still tying up taxpayers' money for 2 years where that money can be put into our infrastructure. So I'll leave it at that. I will not be supporting it myself. Thank you. Anybody else from council? Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like to make a motion that the Council of Essex remove development charges, not including water, wastewater, for the next 2 years for infill properties within the town of Essex.
Thank you. Need a seconder for that one? Deputy Mayor Malash seconds it. Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Bondi, you asked for a recorded vote, didn't you? Okay, recorded vote.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, on the stated motion as moved by Councillor Bjorkman and seconded by Deputy Mayor Malash, Councillor Bondi, how do you vote?
Support, Mr. Clerk.
That's support.
Yeah.
Councillor Vanderdolen, how do you vote?
Opposed?
Councillor Bowman,
Opposed?
Councillor Bjorkman,
Support.
Councillor Verbeek,
Support.
Councillor Guerin,
Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Malash,
Support?
and Mayor Snively.
Opposed.
So with a recorded vote of 4 in favor and 4 against, opposed, the motion fails.
Okay, thank you, council. Okay, guess we'll move along with Jeff. Go ahead.
Okay, through the chair. So continuing on, are there any more questions as it pertains on the operating side of the 2021 budget?
Go ahead, Councillor Bondi. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I just have a couple questions around our contracted services. I did, just to bring it up with council, I did watch the last police service board meeting where Mr. Miller talked about community mobilization officer and whether council should have a discussion about that at some point. It was really good. It was when we talked about, when we dismissed the contract manager, whether we would have an officer dedicated just exclusively to traffic enforcement. So something to talk about, because I saw that last year, we gave notice to the OP that we were dropping that track manager. Just want to clarify, Mr. Mayor, to our CEO, that is indeed happening. And then I have one more OPP question, please, or one more contracted service question.
Go ahead.
Through your worship, Councillor Bonnie, could you just repeat what you're looking for clarification on? You froze up on me a little bit there.
Yeah, sorry. Even in here, it isn't fantastic. So the contract manager position that is going to be done this January.
Correct. As per council resolution, correct.
Okay, and just through you, I'm wondering if you can get this answer from the police service board. I'll turn off my video for a minute. If you can get the answer from the police service board in terms of overtime billing for occurrences in our municipality. I did print off the 2020 OPP municipal policing billing inquiry, and I have been asked by residents to get a number figure on the cost of the investigation into our election and the cost in total overtime police hours and the cost in terms of our court costs. So I'm not sure if you have that answer tonight, you might not, but if there is a possibility to get that cost, because our residents do want to know what that did cost us.
Through your worship, absolutely, I don't have that answer tonight. I would suggest, Councillor Bonnie, that you submit that through to the police service board as well, so that they can, we can follow those channels and they can, as a board, request that information, and then that answer can funnel through the board back to you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from council have anything? No. Go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair. So I'll touch back on the resolutions. I was getting to there, and then I realized that we needed to venture down the infill residential road. So I don't know if council wants to deal with operating separately, or if you'd like to move on to capital, and then you or council can deal with them at the end.
Councillor Verbeek, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so we can all have a sigh of relief and pat Jeffrey and team on the back, I would make the motion that we adopt the operating budget as presented tonight, and then move on to the rest.
I got a seconder, Councillor Van. Any questions? Councillor Bowman, you got a question? Go ahead.
I don't disagree with the operating budget, but if we made some changes in the capital budget, it might affect the operating budget.
No, I don't think it. No, it won't. It won't.
Okay.
Councillor.
Then I'm fine.
Okay. Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would suggest we hold off until the end and we do the resolutions then. If we do something in capital and we raise the tax rate in capital and we need to offset it, we may go back to operations to look for some way to offset. I don't think so. I think we're happy with it, but I wouldn't put ourselves in that position until we've had the conversation. It's still going to happen this evening. Nothing's going to change whether we do it now or 4 hours from now. 4 after we're done capital. But I think we should hold off until we've had all of our discussions and then make those motions.
Is that okay with the mover and the seconder? Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, through the chair. Now we will move on to page 37 of the 2021 budget document. This is the capital summary. And we will begin through capital. I'm not going to go through the asset management implications or asset management snapshot or the asset management lifecycle reserve forecast. We delved into that on the November 30th council introduction and walkthrough of the budget at a pretty deep level. So I will transition now straight into the capital budget. I don't know, we walked through projects individually at the walkthrough and introduction. I don't know if council would like the same done again, or you would just like to have a comprehensive discussion as it pertains to capital. Maybe if we walk through them by group, and if you have any questions, you can raise them at that time. That might give some structure. And when you're referring to projects, please make sure that you reference the page numbers so that Shelley can follow along, and the project number so that administration can follow along easily. So I'll start by group. So first off is property tax supported on page 46. You have council. There's the Harrow Streetscaping Project. Kevin Gerard gave pretty detailed introduction and walkthrough on that last time. I'm not sure if he has anything else that he'd like to add at this point.
Kevin, did you have anything else or no?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think, like Jeff said, I had a pretty comprehensive explanation last meeting, but I'm happy to answer any questions if council has any.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will move on to council contingency. That's $50,000. Next project is Essex Streetscaping Engineering. So this is the I believe concept design and engineering for the Essex Streetscape in the amount of $460,000. And it's key to note that that $460,000 is actually the assessment increase from 2020 and the assessment increase from 2021 that we're going to be able to absorb to pay for that. So that's money that came from new taxation that was set aside to pay for that. I don't know if there's any questions. That's council as a whole. Are there any questions?
No questions, Jeff.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I will then move on to the division office of the CAO. There's the ductless HVAC for the Director of Infrastructure Services. Then we're on to, are there any questions on office of the CAO? No? Okay, we'll move on to police. There's the new ductless air conditioning units for OPP satellite office at ECC. It's an upgrade from the window units. That's $10,750. And then there's police contingency for miscellaneous projects that might pop up throughout the year. And that's $25,000. Are there any questions on police?
No, go ahead. Oh, Councillor Bondi, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we were told before that the Essex detachment office was only a community hub office, we had talked about potentially, or maybe I thought we talked about potentially making that another, like a bigger, better office. It's just something to keep on the radar. Like, I do really feel that the complaints about policing have gone down. I'm not getting nearly as many, but I think the complaints about policing I'm still getting, they seem to be based in Ward 1, with police presence in Ward 1. And so I don't know if making that office where the officers can check in and check out again is something we can do at all ever again. Just something that's on my.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, so we'll move on to cemeteries next. We have the remesh fence at Erie Cemetery, sign replacement and parking at Colchester Memorial. All those projects have a total of $26,790. Are there any questions under cemeteries? Okay, now we'll move on to corporate services, information technology. We have the SAN upgrade, which is a storage area network. That has a cost of $45,000. We have an IT strategic plan. It's to obtain consulting services to review and develop overall strategic goals for the corporate IT department. That's $40,000. And we have Microsoft software deployment. That's $39,000. Wireless radio upgrade. That's $10,400. LED screen replacement, that's $10,200. That one was removed. Sorry, that one was removed on the list of changes. Then you have replace intercom PA system at Essex Recreation Complex, $2,386. And then projector replacement at Essex Center Sports Complex, $43,444, with a total of $151,373. Are there any questions on corporate services, information technology?
Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to our IT. So I understand the importance of strategic plans all through our departments and building, but I'm just asking about, it's a favorite one of residents when they see consultants fees all over a budget. Just as far as the $40,000, just seems like a rather large amount for a fairly small department, but I understand it. And I understand this department goes throughout our operation. So could we just have an idea of what that strategic plan, what's our goal aside from the fact that the plan will give us action?
Through the chair. So that plan will identify our strategic priorities from an IT perspective. We run light in IT. We have a manager of information technology, a desktop specialist, and then some additional support from GIS. So internally, we don't have the staffing power to create a plan internally. We have, as you can see, 8 iPads for council. We have, how many, like approximately 50 some computers, desktops, monitors. We have screens in various facilities that are managed by IT. We have radio towers for our internet that are on top of the water towers that point to location. And the municipality is, as noted previously, is the second largest by landmass in the county. So we have a lot of technology infrastructure. So it's just setting us up in a position where we can have redundancies built in, where we can have a consultant come in that has those specialized or has that specialized knowledge and can work in conjunction with our IT department to determine, the best fit and the best solutions for Essex. So it will provide us with a tool that we can look at and reference moving forward and create that roadmap. So in my opinion, it should create efficiencies within the department where we can have everything mapped out and guided for us, and we can follow along that to make sure that everything's working and integrated effectively. So at $40,000, that was an estimate put in there. Of course, if it comes in at $20,000, that'll have $20,000 remaining in reserve for future use.
Yeah.
But compared to other studies, we needed a ballpark, and that's kind of where we felt it would fit.
Okay, no, thank you very much. That's an answer I can give. Thank you.
Okay, so next I will move on to corporate services, human resource division. This is for an HRIS system. So this is an implementation of a human resource information software system. And once again, that has an estimate of approximately $40,000 based on costs we've seen. That's about where we expect it to come in at. This will allow us to track information pertinent to our employees a little bit better. Any questions?
No. Go ahead.
I will next move on to community services. Fire, I can pass the baton off to Doug if he'd like, or I can go through at a high level, and if you have any questions, he can pop in. Oh, there he is. There you go.
Thanks, Director Morrison. I do have the chief. He is available if there are any questions. I know we talked about all his projects last time. I think I'll just open up if council has any comments or questions on those capital projects for fire.
Any questions? No. Oh, Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just I think we asked this question last time. I've got a question mark still sitting here on my piece of paper, so I don't know if it got done. The engine, replace engine 3A for station 2. So that amount there, is there extra now for outfitting one set? Is that the stock truck that's coming in? And then we will have other costs incurred to outfit that truck?
Through you, your worship. No, that money, what the equipment that will outfit the truck, we will take off the current vehicle. So we transfer all equipment from one to another, so we don't incur extra costs from. And we've also included the cost of lettering and putting the radios is all within the cost of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Go ahead, Jeff.
Your worship, I think I'll continue the rest of our community services. So again, since there are quite a few projects, I'll open up to council if they have any questions on any of the projects that we discussed last time we've gone through. The one that's not in the capital, but I did email out to council, was the price on the phasing in of the Essex sport fields. So that's not in the current document, but council was sent that last week. I'm not sure of any questions on any projects for community services.
Counselor Verbeek, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The second item under parks, the hard surface trails. It says, within urban centers. Is this going to include the paved shoulder from the steam and engine to the greenway to complete that circuit? I know it's getting old. I started on our first facilities tour pointing out that stretch of road. Is that included in this path here, the hard surface path there?
Your worship, no, this is covering areas, and I'll use an example we used it for last year. In Colchester Park, from Dunn into the park was the gravel type, so we paved that. It's kind of looking in the true urban centers where we currently have kind of the screenings on. We want to make it more of an asphalt or concrete surface. That's the intent anyways of that capital project.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if it doesn't fall under that, where does it fall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, through the past, I believe that would fall under infrastructures in terms of our trail program. That's in the past where it's fallen, those type of areas.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Counselor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pretty happy with the community services department and some of the things that my ward in particular is getting: the drainage at Liberato Park and the bathrooms at the splash pad, two major things that I think my community will really appreciate. I am still of the opinion, though, that the tennis courts in Essex proper, or Essex Ward 1, are not in a great place. And I'm going to be adamant that is a wrong move. So I don't know if there's any desire from this council to revisit that. I just think it's not an ideal spot. And I haven't got one email about we need the tennis courts. I don't know. So I just wanted to let council and the community know I'm not crazy about the location.
Counselor Garin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, on those tennis courts, Doug, the master plan calls a need for it. We know that. I understand they're going to be next to where the Fitness Fury is. Is that correct?
Your worship, that was always the plan, even prior to Fitness Fury. When the consultant was looking at it, there's parking, it's off the trail, but also because of the wind. A lot of tennis courts, for example, McGregor, we have a problem with wind. So that was the location they put out at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with the need for the complex, the sports complex, I guess it kind of would make sense to tie it all together and put it there. That'd mean changing your plans that we already have approved by the ministry, a whole bunch of other work, right?
Your worship, you can let council know we haven't picked a location for tennis courts. That was a location that consultant came up when it was back through the master plan in 2015. Things have changed. It hasn't been approved in our budget for us to look at a location, so there hasn't been a location that has been firmly set.
So I guess piggybacking on what Councilor Bonnie's saying, I don't get many calls. I have not got any calls actually regarding the tennis courts. I do believe the tennis courts are needed in communities. It's pretty tough to encourage your youth to take up tennis if there's no tennis courts. It is a lot of money, 240, that we've been earmarking for a while, and we could sure go to perhaps some roads now, but I'll take care of the roads when we get to that section. Maybe there's another way around it, but I'm wondering maybe if we could possibly look at, I liked your explanation as to why they want to put it in that area as opposed to in a new developed piece of property with no trees and no buildings to block it and that, but it would be nice if it was kind of all together with the sports complex. That's the only comment I really have on it right now. I didn't know if it had to go in the space that we had picked for it or what, but anxious to hear if anyone else has any input on it.
Go ahead, Doug.
Your worship. And just one thing, we keep calling them tennis courts, which is true. But what we've done at Harrow and McGregor, and it seems to be the trend, it's also pickleball. So it's actually two sports. So if you haven't got contacted by some pickleballers, I'm sure you will. But yeah, no location has been set. But when we do look for location, whenever time comes where tennis courts are approved, those are the type of factors we have to look at. And it's the wind condition, accessibility, such like that to get to the courts.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead, Doug.
And just if council has any further questions on any community service projects.
Thank you, Doug. Seeing none.
Thanks, council.
Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, we will now transition over to page 52 with development services. I'll leave that for Director Chadwick to walk you through.
There we go. I couldn't find my cursor. Good evening once again, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So very straightforward, and if we do need to revisit any of these projects, I'm here to answer any questions. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to take a peek at our list of capital projects. And as I indicated at our first budget meeting, they are all funded either through rollover projects or reserve or through development charge reserve as well. So it's very straightforward. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Okay, Council, we went through these. Any questions? Oh, thank you, Laurie.
All right, through the chair, we're going to move on to page 54 now. We're in Public Works or Infrastructure Services, and I will pass that off to Director Gerard.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I did present all of the Public Works projects and equipment at our last meeting. I'll open it up to any questions that council may have.
Any questions from council to Kevin? Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I might have missed the location of this in our last meeting. So PW 200039, the building expansion and warehouse upgrade. Is that at the yard that's being upgraded?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. It's on the Ferris Road yard in Harrow.
Through the chair, I'd like to also add on to that is that was a project approved in 2020 and it was funded from development charges.
Oh,
Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Vandendal, you were next. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, it's just a matter of interest to me. What brand of grader are we buying for $450,000? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our procurement policy states that we can't sole source a piece of equipment like that to a certain company, so we would put it out for tender and assess it based on competitive bidding.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, there are a couple of things here that I have some concerns with. One of them is the Maidstone Arthur Gosfield intersection improvement. It's quite an undertaking. Director Gerard sent me the picture of it and what's going to happen. So I was out there for a couple of days and actually just sitting in a couple people's driveways that I was waiting for somebody to come out and knock on my car to see what it was I was doing out there. But I just wanted to see that intersection. And Councillor Guerin had brought up at our last meeting about traffic traveling west on Maidstone and now having to stop and turn left, and that There's no room for a turning lane. And when you're watching, there's no room for a shoulder lane either, because it's so close to the intersection that the crosswalk that the kids will be using is directly there. So if somebody pull over onto the shoulder to go around somebody because they don't want to wait for the guy to turn left anymore, you just about land right at the crosswalk. There's a few things there, and it's a $500,000 project. It's a big deal, and it's something brand new. I didn't even know we were heading this way until we got this at the last meeting. So just wondering, as we were looking at traffic patterns and things that were there, one of the questions I have is, did we look at this to look to increase safety so that people aren't trying to go around, to make this a three-way stop at that intersection, so that the traffic traveling east and west on Maidstone actually have to come to a full stop at that corner, and everybody takes their turn? I know we have complaints from residents along there about trucks flying down Maidstone, and you've got the cement trucks going down. You've got transport trucks using that road, lots of buses using that road. Is that something we've looked at for that corner? Is to make it a three-way stop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm sure CAO and EPSI can comment as well, because there is a history behind this intersection. Maidstone Avenue is a connecting link that does fall under our agreement with the County of Essex. We did consult the County of Essex when looking at this intersection, and I truly don't think that the county is going to support a three-way stop here. That was something that was discussed maybe 2 or 3 councils ago. And again, CAO and EPSI can attest to that, because I believe there may have been an on-site meeting with council at the time. But the image and how we're proposing to configure this intersection is something that we discussed with the county. It is something that will allow for the proper flow of traffic, considering the traffic volumes on both of those roads. So we are confident that it will improve the configuration and the safety of the intersection. It does need to be designed. So it does need to be, we do need to consult an engineer, which is included in the cost of the $450,000, and which would indicate whether we need a slip-through lane that you indicated along Maidstone, or a turning lane onto Gosfield from Maidstone. And it would also look at that pedestrian crossing that crosses north and south over Maidstone Avenue as well, and the distance from that. So there is some investigatory work that needs to happen. There is some engineering that needs to happen as well. The image that was presented to you at last meeting was meant to provide you with a conceptual idea of what the town was looking to do, and what the county has essentially agreed to. So it is up for engineering, and it is not the final design. It's literally an image that we put together for concept. But there is quite a bit of engineering that needs to be looked at, and some traffic counts that need to be assessed as well.
Thank you.
Further to that, Mr. Mayor? So further to that, we're looking at, so we've got designing to do, we've got engineering to do, and we're at this moment taking $450,000 to $500,000 of this budget and putting it there. I would suggest that what we need to do is get a design and get an engineering study and get a better idea of what it's going to be, and not tie up $450,000 in this year's budget. However, let's budget for the engineering and for the design, and let's use that money that's ostensibly for putting in roads right now, and put in a couple roads. So that's a suggestion I would make with this particular total. Something for us to talk about, think about, but I think we're putting a lot of money aside that it doesn't look like we're actually going to build anything this year. If I'm wrong, just let me know, but that's kind of how I'm looking at that marker.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just I'd like some clarification maybe on Councillor Bjorkman's comments. We did have an engineering study completed on this intersection, which did identify the need for a roundabout. So a study per se would not necessarily tell us what is needed because we know it's a roundabout. What this is meant to be an interim solution. We have a lot of capital expenditures coming our way with streetscapes and other projects that may not allow us to get to the $4 million roundabout without some substantial funding or grant funding, which is why it's come to council as an interim solution until that roundabout can be needed or is needed. So what I would propose is maybe completing the engineering design on this, or completing a preliminary engineering design for council's consideration. I don't think that a study at this point would provide much help. So I'd like to ask Councillor Bjorkman if he would like to try and look at engineering this, or like doing the full engineering or preliminary engineering to bring back to council.
Okay, and that's much clearer. Now I don't want to engineer it. But yes, it does. We're at that point where, you know, we need to see what it is, and I get the idea of taking some money and saying, okay, we're going to target something with that. But we're in a position where we're trying to be frugal with what we're doing with our funds, and I think we should use our money that we're putting towards this year to doing work this year. And again, I don't know the engineering of it. I don't know all the other things that need to go on. But if we're only going to spend $100,000 this year, then let's put $100,000 in the budget for this year and free up that other $350,000 to do something with. Anyways, I'll listen to council's thoughts on that.
Councillor Verbeek, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I do have some other questions, but I have to admit to council, I'm a little confused by Councillor Bjorkman's question. Was the $450,000 not to complete the project as presented to us at the original walkthrough? Is that a mistake?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, the 450,000 includes engineering costs as well as construction costs. So it would be the total cost to complete the intersection.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Guerin, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Gerard. So, Kevin, you engineered this. Do you feel confident that in this year you can come back to council with the final look of this? We get another say in it, and we can complete it in this year's budget, or at least start it in this year, perhaps finish it early next year, whatever.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Like I said to Councillor Bjorkman, if council would like to go the route of engineering this intersection with the commitment that we're going to proceed with this configuration, at some point, whether it was in 2021, 2022, or the future, we can complete the engineering design. I can commit to presenting that engineering design to council to make a decision of when we'd like to go with an updated budget figure. At a bare minimum, if council would like to proceed with this, I would recommend budgeting at least $75,000 to complete the engineering. And then we can have the discussion in 2021 or 2022 budget deliberations for the actual construction. So there's some options here for council. It's recommended by administration for your deliberation. So if you would like to complete the engineering with the intent of completing it later, or if you would like to construct it and design it this year, that is what is being recommended.
Thank you, Councillor Guerin. Go ahead.
Yeah. So further to that, then, well, I like what you presented in terms of getting the money there now. Councillor Bjorkman's right. We do need money for some other roads. I'm going to be speaking to a couple of those myself in Ward 1. But this intersection needs to be, we've identified it needs to be fixed. I'm actually all for slowing down the traffic through that intersection if we can, only because times have changed over the years. There's so many new builds on the other side of Maidstone Avenue with young kids walking across that crosswalk. And like I say, reconfiguring the intersection to be safe is great. That's one thing. But the safety of that intersection for the residents is also another thing. It's really big. I mean, I'm mixing with these on social media with these people that live over there and in that community, and they really feel it's still going to be unsafe one way or the other. So would the county have appetite for, if not three-way stop, would they have the appetite for at least a flashing crosswalk or even lights at that intersection that can stop the traffic? I mean, from the roundabout to our Tim Hortons intersection, there is no stop in there. And I don't see why we can't slow the trucks down with a set of lights if need be. Why is there always a big hurry to get the traffic flowing without taking into consideration the safety part of it? So I know adding lights is going to be a lot of money. I'm not sure about the lighted crosswalk, if there's a technology out there that we can use that's safe. I know it's an interim solution to a much bigger solution, but who knows? We may do this in 10, 15 years of the road, then do the circle, or we may never even have to do the circle or roundabout. So I really want to stay on this. I want to do this intersection this year. I just want it to be done right. And I think that's maybe where Councillor Borkman's coming from. I'm sure he's getting feedback as well as we all are from residents. And we just want to make sure if we're doing it and spending $450K, that it's done right and it's going to be safe.
Thank you. Anybody else from council? I don't know what to say on this one here. I know this has been brought up to me many times, this intersection, and I know Chris, our CAO, has been involved with the county on this, and I don't know. This what I see here, what Kevin's put forward, I like it. It's a big improvement for that intersection. And yes, Councillor Guerin, that is a built-up area now on that side. A lot of new homes there. But I think this is going to be a lot safer intersection now if this is completed than what it is now, to be honest with you. It's a big improvement. So I'll leave it at that. Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am understanding what Councillor Bjorkman has to say, but this intersection is a bad one, and I would feel a great sense of accomplishment for the residents in that area if we got this accomplished. I just want to go full steam ahead personally and just fix it. It's definitely a safety issue. I don't drive around there that often, and I had to go out to the Gallows subdivision and I didn't even know how to navigate it. So I am voting for fixing it as soon as we can possibly.
Thank you. Well, it's in the, Councillor, it's in the budget, and it's the design. Kevin's already brought that forward, so all we have to do is approve this. So, any other questions? No. Thank you, Kevin. Councillor Verbeek, go ahead.
Oh, only if we're moving on to other issues within this section.
Pardon me? Go ahead.
Only if we're moving on to other issues within this section. My question is on a different topic.
No, we're not done yet, Councillor. Okay. Any other questions on this intersection? Councillor Guerin, go ahead.
No, sorry, I didn't know. I misunderstood you. I thought we were moving out of roads.
Yeah.
So I got to ask the question to council. Are we all in favor of what's going on with this intersection? We're going back and forth. Okay, Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Yeah, to answer your question, Mr. Mayor, for myself, no, I'm not settled with this intersection yet, and I don't expect to be settled tonight. It's not my intention to pass the capital budget this evening. I won't be in favor of that. This is a good time for us to discuss where we think of the roads. This is more information for us to take back and ponder. We're doing well. We're still in November. We've got time to discuss these issues, take them back, look at them again and come back together another time. So I don't think this needs to be hashed out tonight. I think we all need to get out what we want to say. We need to create some conversation and let people work this through. So I don't think this is finished tonight.
Thank you, Counselor.
Just a point of information, we're no longer in November. We're December.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, with the budget. Go ahead, Counselor Garen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so we're on roads. I want to talk about, we obviously can't do these big roads that we all know, we talked about last meeting, need to be done. Because of the cost involved to do Irwin and the cost involved to do Victoria, we can't get them in this budget, maybe next year. But I'm trying to find some money for a couple of these smaller roads. As Councillor Bjorkman was saying, I think that's where he was going with that too. If we can put some money towards some other roads, it'd be great. Question I have for Mr. Morrison. Do we have any unspent gas tax money from prior years that we could use in this budget to add to getting maybe some roads done?
Through the chair, we do. We usually identify that money at year end and it's carried forward to the next year. So that would be 2022. But as of our last review, our conservative amount is approximately $200,000. So there is approximately $200,000 of gas tax money from unspent projects in prior years that hasn't been allocated yet.
Thank you. So further that, Mr. Mayor, through you, I was not sure where we were going to find the money without having to take it from someone else's budget out of Ward 1. That's why I was talking about the tennis courts. I'm hoping not to touch the tennis court budget because it is something that administration and prior councils have spent a lot of time trying to get for the town. But perhaps this gas tax money, like the road I'm thinking of that is on the wish list and was spoken about either last year or the year before, is Viscount Parkway coming into the Viscount Estates. There's no homes on that road, but there are 62 homes and 383 mobile homes that road services. That's approximately 1,200 people. The private property ends at Kingsway. This summer, the owners of the Viscount Estates property did that section of the road. So in essence, we have about half a road done, brand new, and another half a road that is crumbling and deteriorating, and it's beyond the useful life. And I believe it's beyond the patching that we normally would give this road. It's identified as 110,000. I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to probably be a little bit more, like maybe in the 130, 140 range. But that's a road that is going to tie in and complete that area. And then there's another section right around the corner from there off of Victoria Millen that doesn't have any sidewalks. The shoulders on both sides, probably about a good 3 feet on each side, are very bad. To walk on that in an evening when it's dark out and very limited lighting and no one's broken an ankle yet is beyond me. When I do my walks down there at night, I walk right down the middle of it and hope nobody hits me with a car. But maybe we can get even some of that out of that money, or perhaps we can squeeze it into somebody operational. But if we get that gas tax money, I know it's not for just Ward 1, but maybe that's some money we could use for those roads. And I'm sure some other councillors have some ideas for it as well. So those are my concerns, and I just wanted to get them out there and see what everyone else has to say about it. Thank you.
Question to Jeff from myself. ELK dividends. We haven't pulled dividends for a long time from there. If we were to pull dividends from ELK, we could use that towards roads, right?
Through the chair, if ELK were to issue a dividend, we would report back to council, and council could at that time determine what they wanted to do with it.
Yes, so it could be used wherever. Yep. That's what I meant. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions from, go ahead, Councillor Purby.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I had to, just the two questions. Here we are, Sidewalks and Trails, $50,000 there, with over 1,500 people in the center of McGregor, and our engine museum and our tennis courts, the park there, you know, being, you know, so close to Greenway Trail, where when we were on that facilities tour, and I think, well, I know, Mr. Dempsey, when I was showing you where we were hoping for a path there, you said that looked like there was enough shoulder to close that loop. That would make a 5-kilometer loop around and through the town using connecting to the Greenway. I'm wondering, does that fit in that sidewalks and trails 50,000? And I have another question. Is that where that falls? I'm just.
Can you answer that, Jeff? Kevin's gonna have to answer it.
Yeah, I can speak through you, Mr. Mayor, to the sidewalk line item under roads and budgets. So the annual sidewalk line in the capital budget is intended for an extension of yearly maintenance to the sidewalks. So we put that $50,000 in capital in there, and we review the sidewalks after the winter abuse to them, and we conduct repairs with that money. If council wishes to allocate it directly to a sidewalk, that can be completed as well. But it will result in a lower level of service in terms of the maintenance.
Thank you, Kevin. Go ahead, Councillor Verbeke, you had another question.
Yeah, well, on another line item, but I just have a follow-up for Mr. Gerard. Is like the price difference, like when we had originally spoke about it, we looked at like a paved shoulder. Is that cheaper than a sidewalk, or? And just for the, you know, to keep that active trail, to close it off, is it paved? What is there a difference in the paved shoulder and the sidewalk price wise? And
through you, Mr. Mayor, just a clarification. So you're speaking about the trail that's along the 11th concession within McGregor?
yes, but there is not, the sidewalk ends at once you get to the park and the museum, and then it's just the road, and the road is you know, it's a pass through for people coming from the city to the county. It gets very busy during the, you know, the commuting hours for sure, but it's also quite active. We have Wildwood where I have people, when I was working at the bar, I had a couple that used to come down on bikes all the time from Wildwood. So having to go on the 11 when there's room for the paved shoulder. I know tonight isn't the night that we're going to decide about whether or not that's the shoulder that this money is going to be spent on. I'm just asking if that would be where it would fall if the case was such. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, typically, like I mentioned, that line item is there for annual maintenance on our sidewalks. It's not necessarily for new projects. I am aware of the trail that council is requesting, or that you're requesting on the 11th concession. In fact, I actually had a conversation with Deputy Mayor Malash about it as well, as he had submitted this as one of his council requested projects back in August. So we had a discussion, and we did identify it with Jeff Watson as a potential project for the CWATS master plan update. As more information becomes available, we can keep council updated. But I would have to get some clarification from Jeff as our CWATS committee member.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask my second question? And I did, Jeff Morrison, we had that brief conversation about the LED conversion lights. I'm just wondering, when I got off the phone, I thought that, you know, you assured me that that's where the the new McGregor streetlights would fall in at where the sidewalk continues past 11 to the, the town cutoff, where all that housing and the 3 sets of apartment buildings are. How many lights will that be? And when is that expected? Because I do have some residents that are going to be asking, when is that light coming? Because they have been for 2 years, right? Okay. That's my question.
Through the chair, I'll pass this off to Mr. Gerard.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The LED conversion program is the funding in the capital budget is for the existing streetlights. So all of the existing streetlights are being converted to LED. We're just over 50% replaced from the old incandescent high pressure sodiums to LEDs now within the town, which is why you see a carry forward item carried into the 2021 budget. Any new installations of streetlights have not been budgeted for as part of the 2021 capital budget. But if they are existing streetlights, they are being converted to LED if they have not been already.
Thank you, Kevin. Anybody else? Go ahead, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to administration. My understanding is that for the paved shoulder on County Road 50, in 2020, we did 3 times the limit. We did all the way to Kingsville. So we did 3 years worth in 1 year. So I think we need to let our residents know we're not going west, right? We're not going west at all in this budget. And I don't believe we're going anywhere in the next budget, right? We have 2 years. If I could just get confirmation on that. And then I have another question, please.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. There is no CWATS trails included in the 2021 budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gerard. I have I don't know when is the time to bring it up, but the trail on the 3rd concession, just through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps to our Director Morrison, is there any savings or any unspent monies from the trail job that we did this year on County Road 50? I'm looking for pockets of money too, and I'm looking for an eventual council commitment to the paved trail on the 3rd concession. It is in the council wish list. I believe it's only $120,000, but I'm not expecting that we get it done this year in budget. But if we could put, if there's any savings from any, CWATS projects, if we could start to earmark it. The 3rd concession has been an issue, and I get a lot of complaints, a lot of safety issues, a lot of speeding issues. We have a lot of families there now. We have made a beautiful sidewalk on both sides of Queen going all the way up there, and we've allowed a subdivision, a beautiful subdivision and condos to exist without any way to get there, any walkable way. So just looking through you, Mr. Mayor, to our director to see if there's any possible pockets of funds for that project.
Through the chair, the CWATS project on County Road 50, that was 3 years worth of project done in 1 year. So council had committed the CWATS trail funding or our trail funding towards that project for 3 years, with the final year being 2022. However, we still do contribute to our trails reserve, and there's approximately $220,000 in there. It's related to contributions and amounts that were saved in relation to various trails related projects.
If I can continue, Mr. Mayor, through that trail reserve, I'm not sure how much Councillor Verbeek's trail is going to be and the 3rd concession trail, but can we at some point have a discussion about earmarking some of that money to these 2 projects?
Good.
Through the chair.
What I'm doing is I'm lobbying for a wish list project, right? A capital wish list project that's on the council list. Because if we don't lobby for them, eventually, if we don't ever lobby for them, what's the point in us having them there?
So through the chair, and any changes to the proposed budget, any removals or inclusions, I guess council would have to make a motion for their project, get it seconded and vote.
Okay, got a mover and a seconder.
No, I'm not moving or seconding.
Oh, okay.
Questions?
Oh, questions. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So
Go ahead.
we've got,
Go ahead.
yeah, do we have an idea of what we want done on the third concession at this point? Like, we're throwing money at something we don't even know what we're doing for sure. Is it like a 1 meter wide swath of pavement that we're adding onto the road? Is it a sidewalk that we're putting in? Have we even looked to see if there's electrical that has to be moved? What specifics have been thrown at this project? It's not a project that I want to see go away or anything like that. I do want this done as well. I'm just wondering what stage we're at with this project to know what kind of money we need for it. I know that in the budget there's 127,000 from what Councillor Bondi was saying, or 120,000. But what does that include? That 120,000, is that looking to put what kind of infrastructure in that location, and from where to where? Thank you, Mr. Gerard.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did do a cursory review and a preliminary estimate, which is the estimate that you see included in the council wish list. We identified putting a 1.5 meter sidewalk to connect the sidewalks on Queen Street to Selleck. So we were going to basically install a 1.5 meter sidewalk along the south side of the third concession to Selleck Drive, where it meets third concession.
Thank you. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Further. And is that sidewalk connected right to the road, like right at the road, or is there a grass between the road and the sidewalk? And then the residents will be responsible for cleaning that sidewalk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's exactly it. So it would be a sidewalk that would be separated by a grass boulevard as much as possible, or as much as the cross section will allow us. There is some hydro on that side of the road, which may have to be, worked around. But yes, that's exactly it. It would not be a paved shoulder connected to the third concession. It would be a concrete sidewalk from Queen Street to Selleck.
Okay. Councillor Van Dolen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, as much as I would like to see a trail built in my ward, I'm wondering if this might be premature, and if we just wait a little bit more, another solution will present itself to us. I noticed 10 days ago that surveyors were out in the field where the Deliberations subdivision is supposed to go. They're staking out what looks like sewage lines. They weren't corner stakes to sell the property. And as far as I know, that subdivision will eventually hook up to the housing on the third concession there that needs the sidewalk. The trouble with putting a trail on that road is that you're still going to have people speeding, because everyone in this town speeds, or at least 90%. So that won't change. But if the Deliberations subdivision hooks up to that subdivision, people are naturally going to walk through the subdivision to get to the core of town, and they won't walk on the, like, right next to the speeders on concession 3 and then down Walker. So that might not be the best use of money if 3 years from now people will be taking a different route. I guess that's up to development to tell us if there's some movement on that Deliberations project.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't think we've heard anything, Councillor, from Deliberations. I check on a weekly basis. We haven't heard anything. Councillor. I check on all developments every week, once or twice. So, anyways, any other questions? Thank you. Go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair, it just continues on with infrastructure services, with water, wastewater, or environmental services. Don't know if there's any questions that fall under there. No.
Nothing there, Jeff. Go ahead.
Okay. And nope.
Go ahead, Councilor Verbeek, go ahead.
I was listening to Councilor Bondi talk about the 200 Ks in a trail reserve. Can we ask for that to be earmarked for these trails? I know I've been talking about that piece there along County Road 11 for a couple of years now, and I'm understanding that there's this trail needed on 3. I got to tell you, I'm never out that. I don't travel that way, but if it's needed, could we maybe earmark some of that money for these trails?
Through the chair, yeah, council can make a motion, receive support, and move it.
Well, it's in a reserve for that purpose, right? For these trails. So I would make that motion. Joe, you have your hand up. Are you seconding or waiting for a question?
Go ahead, Councilor Guerin, go ahead.
Cheers, Mayor. Yeah, just to Councilor Verbeek, I liked Councilor Bjorkman's suggestion earlier in the meeting that we take this opportunity tonight to talk about things, and then maybe the next meeting when we're going to make actual decisions, you could bring the motion forward to earmark it and ask for a seconder, and we go from there. I think that might be the right process. My thoughts.
Yeah, I agree there, Councilor Guerin. Councilor Bowman, go ahead.
Just a comment. I think the money that you're saying is a saving is from trails. I think there's a big difference between trails and sidewalks. Trails is a connecting area to join one trail to another in a circle or a pattern. Just a plain sidewalk, I don't think that's the idea of a trail. So I think they're two different items. The third concession, I think, definitely is a sidewalk. The one along the 11th, I'm not sure where it falls in. It could be one or the other, depending on what the design is for it. So just keep some thoughts on where we're trying to bring that money from. So thank you.
Councilor Verbeek, you were going to make a motion. You want to withdraw that until the next meeting? Councilor Verbeek? Councilor Verbeek, are you there or we lost you? We lost her. Go ahead, Jeff. Continue.
Through the chair, I guess I can bounce back to the resolutions that were identified at the beginning, looking for approval or adoption in principle of the 2021 operating budget as presented, the 2021 capital budget as presented, and authorization be granted to complete any prior year projects in 2021. Once again, we've come back with a 0% as requested. We have a healthy capital budget, a respectable operating budget, and we've set council up in a position where they could potentially approve it prior to fiscal year end 2020, or come back and debate sections of it in 2021. So I will leave it there, and we can also move into, I guess, if council's coming back, depending on what your appetite is, we have the council and administration capital budget requests outside of 2021 budget. We've already touched on a bunch of them. I'm not going to walk through them. That's all for me then.
I think Councilor Bondi, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see the 3 resolutions. I don't know why we seem like to be in a hurry tonight to end this meeting. to have another meeting, which the next meeting seems like what are we going to discuss again? Like, what are we going to go through again? A tennis court and a trail? I don't know why we don't hash it out a little bit more, because I don't know when we're going to meet again. And if we meet again, I think it's going to be in January about budget. And I am a big supporter of passing our budgets early to give us a competitive advantage on tendering. And I'm a firm believer that that is happening. We give our residents peace of mind. They know what they're getting. Our staff have peace of mind over the holidays. Our staff have done a great job with this budget. I mean, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the things that we're getting in Harrow. I'm happy with the 0%. Our residents are happy with the 0%. I'd love to lobby for a trail. I understand for a sidewalk. I understand if that can't happen this year. At least council does know that that's something that is on the wish list here. I do think Councillor Vanderdolen has a very valid point. You know, if the Deliberations subdivision comes through, yeah, that would solve our problem. Is it going to? I'd like to hear from our administration about the competitive advantage or about any pros and cons from passing the budget tonight. And if not tonight, can we have another meeting in 2020? Like, I just don't understand what the next meeting is going to do. We're just going to talk about the same things.
Thank you, Councillor. I have to agree 100% with what you're saying. I like the budget myself. There's a lot of good things in there, and I think administrative staff worked hard to put it together. And they did come back with what council asked. We asked for 0%. We got a 0%. So I agree with what you're saying. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Thank you, Councillor Bondi. Yeah, that was going to be my kind of task to council. You know, where do you want to head? And I think it's something, as you noted, if you ultimately as a council want no net impact to the residents and are looking to obtain projects outside of the budget presented and maybe go into reserves, that's something you could approve the budget tonight as presented, and we could still continue discussions and tap into those reserves. So there could still be a motion that comes in January, February, even June to say, hey, we know we have 200 grand in reserve. We want to push it towards this project or this project, you know, or you can wait till some of these projects come in and see, oh, we've got a savings. Oh, and we have reserves. We can put some of the savings from this project that was tendered and these reserves in order to obtain new projects. It doesn't stop you from having those discussions throughout the year. The only thing you're not going to do throughout the year is add to your taxes, right? So if it's, so there are advantages to passing early. Definitely you get your projects tendered. We get competitive pricing. Historically, that's been the case. The other advantage to passing early is in getting those designs out, right? So it's not just the construction projects. It's like we talked about the Maidstone Gosfield. It's the ability to get that in, get the design, get it back in front of council, and be able to have a discussion early on so that it can be approved or agreed upon, or changes can be made, and then construction can still take place in 2021. So there's definitely advantages to having those things set early. So like I said, if council's net desire is to come with a 0, which I think we're all in agreement is the best thing for our residents in this year in particular, and then we can explore tackling, you know, whether it's just a meeting on reserves and see what projects, you know, we can have a, you know, put everybody in a cage and fight it out and see what projects can come out of reserves that way. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor Bondi. And if there's any other, you know, questions for me or for Jeff, you know, we're here.
Councillor Guerin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, okay, then. So if I think the concern on passing the budget tonight, the capital part of it would be going back to Councillor Borkman's one item. He talked about not being supportive of the intersection at Maidstone. So he'd be having to put his hand up to approve the budget and that project would be in it. Unless you're telling me that we can yank that out of the budget if we want, anytime we want, and replace it with another job, another project. Or let's say there was some discussion on the tennis courts, whether we, you know, location's one thing, but we may have to go into another project like that to find the money. So you know, if we can move some stuff around after the fact on jobs, and these jobs that we're talking about, these projects are not specific, once we okay the budget, then yeah, I guess we could move forward. But my concern would be approving the capital budget, and then maybe one or two of us don't really like a certain project, and we should maybe be putting that in a motion right now to vote on.
So through your worship, that's not what I'm saying. Like, if you approve the budget, people are going to start working on those projects. So the projects that are in there are approved. What I was referring to is if there's projects outside of what's in there and there's reserve or some other formula to be able to fund those, such as the sidewalks or the trails that we're talking about, there's an opportunity to go in there. You know, you can't come back in February, March, April and say, oh, we know we approved that. I don't know what design you've taken, but we're changing it. That's not what I'm saying. So yes, the projects in there are approved. What we've done in the past for roads in particular is we approve the value that's in there. We're not going over that value. So whether we say we approve everything in the budget, but the 400 grand set aside for project X is undetermined, but we know we have 400 grand that is contained in a 0% budget. The only thing you'd have to look at potentially is where that 400 grand is being funded from, because that would be a concern. If the project is from life cycle, if a project is from OCIF or gas tax funding. So there is complications to doing it that way. But again, I'll leave it with you guys that way.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Just go ahead, Councillor Verbeek. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. My device died, so I'm on my phone here. I missed a little chunk of the conversation, but I'm in favor of, I mean, administration put a great budget in front of us tonight. And I heard comments about how at least they can, they can move forward and start tendering some of these projects and planning for some of these projects. If I'm happy to sit here and hash it out. Would I like to lobby for all of my projects on the wish list? Sure, just like the rest of us, right? And maybe beg council to earmark some of the trails, reserve for my trail in my ward. But I mean, can't all that be hashed out at our roundtable in the new year and move forward and support all the work that I mean, I'm not saying let's pass it as is right now. If there's councillors, and I understand Councillor Bjorkman wants us to look at this intersection a little further and see if there's a way we can pass the budget as it's put forth, addressing that by doing perhaps just earmarking that money and then just doing the engineer report and sitting back and seeing how whether that's indeed the way we'll move forward with it. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm okay hanging out. I thought that we were going to really try and I thought this was such a great document, and that there was a lot of work. I don't know. I'm willing to sit here and hash it out till we can get this passed. I think it'd be a gift in return to our administration that did us a solid here with this report, with this budget. Anyway, that's my comments.
Councillor Van Dolen, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I agree with Councillor Verbeek. This is a great budget. Everyone I've talked to about it, by everyone I mean taxpayers and residents, are very delighted at the zero. They're very delighted that a few things will get built and that there's some development happening. People are happy with the job we've done so far. And I don't think there's any doubt we can pass the operating budget in a blink tonight, but I'm not convinced about this Maidstone capital thing. I just don't see it as a priority. I could see that money being way better spent on a bunch of our sidewalks and other things. And I think that's maybe what we should, I mean, I don't think it's going to take another 3-hour discussion to settle it, but I'm not sure tonight's the night we should settle that issue. It would only take probably another hour and another night to decide like what really are the priorities we want. I think it's about a $300,000 or $400,000 swing, and we either spend it on Maidstone or we spend it somewhere else, but it's still going to be around the same amount. So could we just pass operating and then come back to capital later?
Jeff, you want to say something? Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, I just wanted to add on to what CAO Nepsi had identified, that $450,000 for that Maidstone intersection, if council's unsure, that can be adjusted in the resolution to earmark it for road related projects. So we do have the 11th and the 25th of January still scheduled for potential budget deliberations. This meeting was actually an additional meeting that was included in case council had the appetite to pass it in 2020. And at that time, we can also come back with the $200,000 that was identified from council and the $220,000 related to trails. And we could have a separate discussion on those two amounts. The budget sets our framework for the year and gives us guidance. But items like that, where we have year end wrapping up, we can get a better figure on that 200,000 related to gas tax. And if it's council's wish to put it towards more road projects in 2021, we can come back early January with that amount for council to discuss. But yeah, we've done it in prior years where there's been a project that didn't sit perfectly with everybody, so it's put in as a lump, and we can come back, and that way it gives council a little more time to digest and more time to get a better idea as to what they want to do with that funding. That way it was kept looser.
Good. Thanks. Deputy Mayor Malash, go ahead.
Thank you, through your worship. Jeff just took the words out of my mouth. There's only a few projects really out of this whole capital budget that we're talking about. Councillor Guerin was concerned about the money that was going to be spent on tennis courts. We're talking about the intersection of County Road 8 and County Road 23 with Arthur. That's another project. I think there might have been a third project, but I can't remember what it is right now. But those, if we have one or two projects that we're talking about that we all can agree on right now, that we believe we could still have some discussion on, and we want to move those dollars around, we can say tonight, we'll pass the budget with exception to, and name the 2 or 3 projects that we still want to have discussion on. I think that might be a better way to do it. Then that way administration knows that they can move on with the other projects and continue on that path, because there's some items in here that are probably time considered as far as trying to get their quotes out, because this is going to be an odd year for trying to get work done, I believe. Just with the whole COVID thing going on, everybody's already behind, and if we don't get our bids out there soon enough, this gives us an opportunity to jump ahead of the queue with everybody else if we can get our budget passed now. So my recommendation would be to just ask if anybody has a project that they want to hold back on, and list those. Maybe somebody can take a record of those. Maybe Mr. Morrison as treasurer, as our head of our finance and budget. But I'm okay with everything that we want to pass at this point in time. If there's anybody that doesn't want to pass certain projects, and then we make a motion that we pass everything except those particular projects.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, but we're going to have a vote on that. We're going to have a vote on the projects that's wants to be held back. Okay, that's fine.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a motion?
Yeah, go ahead.
That we could go with the operating after, but that we pass the capital budget minus the Maidstone intersection. We will just earmark that for future debate, and we'll have a future conversation on the tennis courts location, and we'll have a future conversation during a roundtable possibly on the trails, like Miss Verbeek's trail. And if any other councilor wants to add a project to that, then we can add a project to.
We got a seconder. Okay, discussion. Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Yeah, so project that I would like to add to that is I think we should, in order to have more funds to work on the trails and other things, is to delete the old Malden Road tar and chipping. That's $220,000. And I don't think that's a good spend for the town. So I would like to argue that road.
Okay. It was Councillor Bondi's motion, and if she wants to make that change.
Well, I think there's 4 items now. Those 4 items will be discussed at a later date.
Yeah.
The monies will be earmarked in their categories for discussion at the January date, but we'll pass the remainder of our capital budget tonight.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And who was the seconder?
Okay.
Councillor Van den Dolen, you're okay with that? Okay. Councillor Verbeek, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question for Mr. O'Day. The Old Malden Road was in the budget by council resolution. So would we have to go back to council and get I forget the name of it, but you know, a 6-2 vote by 3/4 vote to change the resolution, because it was one of the items that was in here for resolution.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe so, not necessarily. My understanding, council's not, is council's intention with this resolution to delete it, or it's still earmarked
For discussion.
and it's gonna be discussed at a later date. So it's still part of it, right?
Right. We haven't removed it, Councillor. It's those 4 items are going to be discussed at a future date.
With the monies earmarked.
Yep, with the monies earmarked. Okay? Okay. So we had a mover and a seconder. Kevin, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out that during my research when preparing the budget, that Old Malden Road, the motion that was created for Old Malden Road was that it would be put in the 2021 proposed budget, not necessarily passed and committed, but included in the proposed budget.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you. So no other, go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair, we're just taking notes here. I just want to confirm, so those projects would stay within the 2021 budget, but they'd have an asterisk on them, and they would have a caveat that they will be, they're earmarked for those, but it'll be future discussions, because we have done that in the past for various projects. If they required an initial study prior to commitment of that project, council has committed to a project pending tennis courts as an example. Tennis courts are approved pending report back to council.
That's correct, Jeff. That's correct. Go ahead, Chris.
Through your worship, I also think, though, clarification is the discussion is that they may not happen. So they're earmarked right now, but to be discussed where they may be removed and it may be switched and pivoted on for something else, depending as long as the funding align.
Majority of council though, Chris, right? Majority of council. So I can't see doing away with that intersection. I mean, that's been in the making for a couple years, and but we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it for further discussion. Any other?
Can I just add a point of, Mr. Mayor, can we just add a point of clarification? Anything that's in the roads part of the budget will stay within the roads part of the budget.
Correct.
But perhaps not the tennis court. The tennis
Correct.
court seems up to date, but we're not going to take anything out of our roads budget.
No, we're not. Anybody else? The motion, who made the motion?
Councillor Bondi.
Councillor Bondi, and Councillor Van den Dolen was the seconder. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, council. Operating budget. Need a mover? Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Through the chair, there's the third motion, which is,
The authorization to be,
yes,
for the fiscal year 2021?
yep. And that's
Projects
simply
that
to,
remain- Okay, the projects that remain outstanding as of December 31st, 2020 do not appear on the 2021 budget as presented. So long as the project costs do not exceed previously approved funding amounts of allocations. So need a mover on that one. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjorkman, all in favor? Any questions on it? I should ask that. Any questions? No. Thank you. And I guess that's it for tonight, council. Been a long night, but we got a lot done. So I need a mover to adjourn. Councillor Van Dolen and Councillor Bowman, all in favor? Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for letting us talk about businesses. That was really important to our community. Thank you.
Yep.